Greetings and salutations, old friends, and hopefully some new friends. By the way, welcome to all the new subscribers that we've gotten this month. So tonight is going to be one of those shows that I truly enjoy. You may be aware that we did a big deep dive into the history of UFO crashes from 1897 to 1965. I began to get a lot of people sending me additional UFO cases that didn't make it into our first report. And while I was aware of those, I wasn't very well researched into some of those cases. And we like to bring people what they want to see. And so many people wanted to see more history of UFO crashes. But I was at a loss because honestly, the first presentation that we did, it took so long to put together and research. You have to have everything very accurate. But I knew there was one person for sure that would have a great deal more information, and he will be our very special guest tonight. Michael Schratt. You may have seen him in some recent documentary films, television, radio interviews, podcasts everywhere, or even live events where he does presentations. Michael Schratt is known for his incredible attention to detail when it comes to research. He's actually one of my favorites, and we're so happy to have him back here tonight. He is an aerospace historian, and I would call him a UFO researcher as well. He's incredibly obsessed with the subject of UFOs and is in fact like a walking encyclopedia of every story, every case. In fact, I don't believe I've ever stumped him on anything related to UFOs. Like I said, he's a walking encyclopedia. So knowing full well that my audience would like to hear more about the history of UFO crashes, I contacted him, and when you know he's already had something together, and for UFO crashes, of course, he has a great deal of knowledge about that subject. But tonight we'll be covering, with his help and kind assistance, we'll be covering some of the other lesser known. So we'll consider the first report we did as part one. And we're going to bring him in here in just a moment. We want to take a moment to recognize and welcome all the live chatters, whether you're chatting on Rumble or on Twitch or on pill.net, on our Facebook live feeds, Twitter feeds, or here on YouTube. Welcome one and all. So we're going to try to not waste any time tonight and just get right to the goodies. I know people are here to see and hear what we have to share. So let's bring him in here. Welcome, Michael Schratt.
Hi,
good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and I know you've been very busy, and we'll get to some of that. But I wanted to ask you, because you're famous for that saying, right?
What's that?
The saying about UFO crashes. Did they use that in like multiple documentaries, or did I just hear it too much?
Which saying?
The thing about UFO crashes, and if even one is true, all bets are off, right? Is that it?
I think that's kind of a combination of a lot of different people, but I just kind of put it together, and we'll go over that when we get into our presentation. But really, the odds are in our favor, because looking at the Stringfield cases, there are 119 crash retrieval cases within the Stringfield files. All we need is one to be authentic, and then the case for non-existence just completely falls apart. So again, the odds are in our favor.
Yeah, and I want to ask you for some clarification, because when I did my original report, I'm aware of Stringfield's books and things, and somebody has corrected me on this before, but weren't most of his sources anonymous? So it becomes very difficult to research his cases.
See, that's where we run into the, I guess you could call it a catch-22. Now, it was Leonard's job to preserve an important part of our national history by telling the story within his status report. So that's fine. But it was also part of the agreement was that these witnesses, their identities would remain anonymous to protect their families and to protect their jobs. So he was kind of in this catch-22. He was presenting great information, but there was so much frustration within the field because nobody could independently verify his sources. And so that's the problem we ran into. But that doesn't mean that these these witnesses were not telling the truth.
Yeah, but I have also heard that there did exist some notes from him that identified all of these sources that he sort of left behind. Is
That's
that
always
accurate?
that's been the holy grail, right? Apparently, back in '91, there were 22 bank boxes of material. I'm talking about the original notes, witnesses, sketches, identities, telephone numbers, addresses. All of the intricate details of the crash retrievals were contained within 22 bank boxes of material. Now, I was able to go through the dictation notes from Leonard's secretary back in 2013. There's 65 three-ring binders. We'll go over that a little bit later on.
Jeez,
There's
God,
a
that's a
good
lot of
portion of
material.
material there. But somewhere out in the universe, there may still be 22 bank boxes of material. Now, I have talked to some of the relatives, and they said that whatever Leonard wanted published was published. The rest of it they threw out. I don't know how true that is. I have a sneaking suspicion that somewhere out in the universe, there are still these 22 bank boxes of original witness testimony.
Yeah, and it's just for the benefit of our audience. Like, I know that you have this huge collection, so like you were going to try to get that, you were going to try to buy that or something, right?
I pursued it. Yes, I spoke to Dell. She passed away. That was Leonard's wife. Some of the family members, but they told me that whatever Leonard wanted published, he published. He did not publish the names. Some of the names have come out since then, but at one time there was a tremendous original collection of material that may or may not still exist today. But if it did, it's the best material within the field of ufology, period.
Yeah, but isn't it tantalizing to you that that stuff may be lost to history?
Of course,
So we
because we
lose
could
the
follow up on
actual.
the names. Yes.
Yeah, and as you said, I guess because he did keep people. I understand the need for anonymous sources, but when it's 127 cases, is that what you said? 127. Wow.
119 that I counted.
Oh, 119. That's a lot of anonymous sources. And, I guess I remember before Stan Friedman died, I asked him about the Stringfield cases, and even he kind of discounted them. He said, well, they're all anonymous sources, so we can't do any follow-up. We can't verify. And that, isn't there a trust issue, don't you think? Or is it just me because I'm too cynical and skeptical?
There is.
First thing I think is, let me talk to them. Let me interview these witnesses, right?
But one thing I found after looking at the cases as a whole body of research, you start getting this pattern recognition. Some of these cases start overlapping, and you see common denominators running through the tapestry of these cases. That's where the verification comes in.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So maybe I was, sometimes I'm too dismissive, Michael. Like I don't dig in far enough before I decide to put it off something like this off to the side. So, and I do remember the book, right? Is it UFO? I'll share it for the benefit of our audience here.
Sure. I have it too.
Yeah. Which I think is still available, right?
Everything that we'll be talking about tonight comes from this book right here. UFO Crash Retrieval Status Reports, 1978 to 1994.
And just for the benefit of my audience, I'll share. You can still get this. You can still get this book on Amazon. So
you can still get it at Amazon. It's like
$99 for
$100.
$100 for.
It's not for the faint of heart. You have to have a real passion for this research because
this did not used to be this much money.
No,
right?
It used to be $79.
I bought it. I think I bought it for $40 on eBay, maybe used.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But within this book are the intricate details of these crash retrievals, like where they took place, how many bodies were recovered, did they send it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base? That's what's within this book. But the problem is there's virtually no drawings, no sketches, no illustrations. And so over the past 2 years...
I remember it was very dry read.
It was very dry reading, right.
Yeah, you need a little bit of... I mean, I don't need a picture every 2 pages or something, but, a little bit of visual aid would have helped him because that book kind of... because he has to verbally, with words, describe everything. It seemed like it was a difficult read.
That's what we want to do tonight. We want to take those cases and commit them to a very good detailed sketch, and then finish up with a full color illustration. So that's what I've been doing the last 2 years, going through that book.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you do the best is to illustrate some of these things, since, we don't have photographs or films of a lot of these situations. And I really enjoyed that Dark Files thing that you did, because those were like lesser known cases. And by the way, buy Michael Schratt's crap, everybody. You gotta support him if he's doing good stuff. Yeah, it's nice to see the things visually, you know?
Sure. I can't take credit for the drawings. I'm a facilitator. There's got to be someone out there that believes that this is a worthy cause to actually proceed forward on it. I want to give credit to Rudy Gardea, my sketch artist, Joel Payne, full color illustrator, and then Joseph Wright. He's also my full color illustrator. So without them, I wouldn't have these visual aids for us.
Well, that's definitely interesting. Yeah, I was always curious about that. I wasn't sure if you did all of this yourself.
Nope.
See, you should just tell people that, because now I used to think you were a lot more talented, but now that I know you got people doing it for you, no, I'm just kidding. It's still amazing because some of the details that get translated is so detailed. It's like ridiculous. It's detailed,
Oh yeah, there's a process we went through for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm anxious to see what you got.
All right.
And to hear more about and you're going to show us like the best cases you think from the book, right?
Absolutely. And we will have some world exclusives for you too. So.
All right, we like that. Okay. Absolutely.
All right, so I'm gonna present and share my screen.
Sure.
So hopefully this works. Let's see here. Share. Entire screen. Share. Okay, so then I'm going to go down here. So do you see this, Stephen?
Yeah, and I can add it in here.
Okay.
And there you go.
Slideshow from beginning. Okay, so you see this full screen, right?
Yeah. And
got it. Okay, good. So why don't we start here? Yeah. We will officially begin. So the name of this presentation.
This is like UFO porn already, Michael Schratt.
Oh, whatever.
It's beautiful. It looks great. Great.
We're going to hit you with the 22-inch rims here now. Okay. So, cosmic crashes, corpses, and cover-ups. That's what we're talking about here. Now, we got to go back to Sagan, right? Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So, if these crash retrieval cases are true, what evidence do we have to back it up? That's really the crux of the matter here. It boils down to the physical evidence. Anything short of the physical evidence of crash retrievals, and we're just spinning our wheels. We're going nowhere. We can have all these hearings going on, but
and that's how I feel, Michael. If I like the stories, but if it's just a story, it's not gonna do anything.
I know. We've been waiting 80 years for this, even longer. Go back to 41. I mean, we're well over 75 years here. And if we don't make a management decision right now and, handle the bull by the horns and do this thing, then we're all going to die and another 80 years is going to go by. That's why we've got to do this now. I mean, full stop. So anything less than physical evidence, and we're not just going to get anywhere here. Okay, now. UFO crash retrievals, the ultimate holy grail of UFO research. Why are crash retrievals the holy grail? It's simple. It's absolutely totally simple. It's because they contain the bodies, the debris, and the craft themselves. Those are the three things that we need. And that's what's going to move this field forward. And it's only the crash retrievals that have that tied together. That's why this is the primary focus that will eventually break the back of the UFO cosmic Watergate. Okay, announcements before we begin. The content of each case highlighted in this presentation has remained intact per the description of the original source. The identity of first-hand sources will be protected per Leonard Stringfield's original agreement with his military contacts. The visual aids used in this presentation are computer-generated forensic composite illustrations and sketches which originated from the specific details provided by Leonard's sources. Source for the material covered in this presentation included the following. So here's where we got the information. 3-star U.S. Air Force generals, U.S. Air Force fighter pilots, astronauts, commercial pilots, air traffic controllers, neurosurgeons, pathologists, theoretical physicists, and mathematicians, U.S. Army officers, U.S. Navy officers, military police, high-level Pentagon officials, top military brass, scientists and engineers who worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and other government facilities. So, Stephen, this is a cross-section of first-hand military witnesses where Leonard got his information from. Those are the sources.
And if you wouldn't mind, I don't want to interrupt you because this is fascinating, but can you tell everybody a little more about Leonard Stringfield? Because I don't know very much about him.
No problem.
I know he was a researcher and an author, but you know, I think it would be great to get some more, just to get to know him a little bit.
No problem. Why he was so fascinating. I got you covered here. On the next slide, we got you covered here. We'll talk about the background.
Look at that.
All right. Quotes. Number 1, UFO crash retrievals can't be real because if they were, I would have read about it in the local newspaper, general public. Number 2, there are not now nor ever have been any extraterrestrial visitors or equipment on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Official release, July 1980. And so that's where we're going to challenge them right now. It's our military witnesses against the United States government. That's the challenge that we're going to take these guys to them. Okay, so here's the man of the hour. This is our good friend, the late UFO crash retrieval expert, Leonard Stringfield. Basically, over a 30-year time period, he identified dozens of first-hand military witnesses who dealt with UFO crash retrieval operations. I want to give you some background on Leonard here.
That's funny I asked that. And by the way, just for the benefit of the audience, I didn't see this slideshow before.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So Leonard Stringfield was born in 1920 and grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. By the time he graduated from high school in 1939, he had already memorized the entire dictionary, the kind of guy you want on your team, right? He joined the military as soon as he heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. After the war, he was employed by a chemical company in Ohio and retired after 30 years. Leonard wrote 2 books, Inside Saucer Post 3-0, 1957, Situation Red, the UFO Siege, 1977. Here's the next bullet item that we want to talk about here. His lecture on UFO crash retrievals at the 1978 MUFON Symposium in Dayton, Ohio, caused an international sensation. Yeah, that's right, because Leonard is the person who coined the term UFO crash retrievals. And it was kind of a double-edged sword because this is the first time people had heard all this. And he got taken to task by a lot of the attendees at the conference because he couldn't release their names. So they had no way to verify this. And so, you know, there were a lot of people that were kind of upset because they couldn't get the names. They didn't have the name list. So you could see how they were upset. So bottom line, and then he passed away on December 18th, 1994. So in a nutshell, after he presented his paper on about 12 of these cases with these first-time military witnesses, when he was done with his lecture, this is back in 1978 at the MUFON Symposium, Dayton, Ohio, right next to the Air Force Museum. That's interesting. Okay, so he finishes his lecture, and then he says, you know what? If you or someone you know has first-hand experience dealing with bodies, crash, debris, contact me. You know, I'm putting these people together. I'm putting a united coalition of witnesses together. I would really like to include your testimony. So he gave this announcement, and then he went on a 2-week vacation with his wife, Dell. He comes back 2 weeks later. He's thinking about all this in his mind. He goes to the post office, and he goes to the P.O. box. He opens up the P.O. box. He looked inside. Guess what was there, Stephen?
A whole lot of letters.
Crickets.
Oh, really? I thought I heard a story that he did get a lot of.
Well, there was nothing later. He looked a little bit closer, you know, because he thought it was empty, and there was a small card there. He turned it over, and it said "See Postmaster." So he walked over to the postmaster. He handed this little postcard to the postmaster, and this gentleman said, "Hold on a few minutes." About 6 minutes later, 2 big guys with these big mail sacks over their shoulders came. There were at least 2,500 letters.
Oh, okay. That's what I did hear. He got a huge amount. Wow, that's amazing.
Witnesses. And this makes up kind of this body of evidence here. And we're going to move forward here. Okay, so Cincinnati Enquirer.
Did you ask his wife if he still had the original letters? Or was that in the
all I can say is that a 6-figure sum was offered for the collection, and they turned it down. They turned it down. All right.
Yeah, and
So
just wait, we have to stop there. For just who offered it, Michael? Did you
I
offer
don't know who
that?
offered it, but
Oh, you
I
don't
heard
know. Oh, I thought you
that
did.
that did took
Yeah,
place.
for those that don't know, Michael has like 2 warehouses full of UFO stuff. He's obsessed. He's totally obsessed. And I
You're
know that
so
you
great,
run around and
Stephen.
get whole collections from people of stuff,
Yeah, well,
right?
we have to preserve an important part of our national history.
Yeah.
So this is Cincinnati Enquirer, July 19th, 1993. Author continues quest for truth about UFOs. Quote, what I've collected has staggering implications for mankind. This would be the biggest thing since Christ, really. Yeah, it would be. If you could prove the existence of ETs through the crash retrieval with the bodies and the debris, it would be. It is the biggest thing. It is the big. That's why they talked about how this subject matter is classified higher than the hydrogen bomb. It's above top secret. So that's what we're dealing with here. All right, now here are the 22 bank boxes. Leonard maintained a collection of 22 bank boxes of original correspondence letters, drawings, audio tapes, and testimony from his sources. These witnesses should be located and their testimony should be presented before Congress. Yeah, that would be the best thing. The only problem is we're now beyond racing the Undertaker. A lot of these people are gone. And so we're at the very tail end. It is the final curtain call for disclosure on crash retrievals. Unless they want to come forward, the government's not going to come forward unless we do something proactively to move this field forward. Okay, we talked about the book. This is where all the information that we're going to be talking about tonight. This is the reference to all the information here. All right, so here, let's go to Vegas, Stephen. Would you go to Las Vegas if you knew the odds were 119 to
This is a
your
Michael
favor?
Schratt argument. Yes, I would.
Right?
I would. Yeah, because
So
I do agree with you on this. Only one of these has to be real
yeah,
and true, and it is game over. But there has to be some evidence attached to that one, and there has to be corroboration or multiple witnesses, right?
you're absolutely correct.
It has to reach a level of a burden of evidence.
This cannot be a CE1, right? This has got to be a CE3 with bodies, hardware, and craft. It can be nothing less than that. So the point I'm making here is that if you did go to Vegas and you went to Caesar's Palace and you went to the roulette wheel and it had 120 spots on it and you bet 119, you're going to win almost every time. You can almost not lose. That's why the body of evidence is really falling in our favor. They have to unprove us, basically. So again, odds are in our favor. Now I want to give credit to Rudy Gardea, my sketch artist, and we're going to continue on to the first case here, Stephen. So this is Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, 1946. It did not become Wright-Patterson Air Force Base until 1947 because the U.S. Army Air Corps did not branch off until its own thing until 1947. So it's still Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. The primary source was a private in records management. Source for this case was Space, the Final Frontier, page 59 by Clark McClellan. This is the cover of the book. There is a Stringfield link to all this, but I just want to reference you where I'm getting this information.
Sure.
Here's the original sketch where we started from. So this thing came in on a railroad flat car from Arkansas back in 1946. This is before Roswell now. 15 feet in diameter, about 7 feet tall. It had a series of rectangular windows wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft. There were no rivets, no seams, no visible means of propulsion, nothing on the inside of the craft.
Why do you think we hear that so much? No rivets, no seams. We hear that all the time.
They are antiseptically sterile here. So this is my AutoCAD drawing based off of my first pass SolidWorks. And again, no rivets, no welds, no seams, no hatches. Recovered November 1946 and came to Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. No control panels. Now, if you look here, we've got the dimensions, 15 feet in diameter, 7 feet tall. If you look at the red dot on the window here, that is the attempted point of entry, where they were using a diamond tip drill bit to try to get into these craft. Now, this is the third time I've heard this within my cases here. So there's a historical legacy of the United States military and the military industrial complex desperately trying to breach the hull of these craft. And generally they use diamond tip drill bits, they use acetylene torches, They also use lasers, and I've also heard that in some cases they were successful in breaching the hull of these craft when they dip the entire craft into a vat of liquid nitrogen and cool shock it. That's how they get in.
That's crazy.
And also there was
I don't know if I believe him, but we just had Lukatsky. I'm not a fan of the people he was talking to, but he just claimed that he was inside a UFO, that they breached the hull of a UFO and they got inside, or he got inside. So it's interesting that you mentioned that there's this difficulty, I suppose, in gaining entry to them, right?
There is absolutely a difficulty in entering. Yes, there is.
And now you said this has no control surfaces.
Nope.
At all. So how do they pilot it then?
That's a good question. These things appear antiseptically sterile. They look like they're built on a 3D printer and on the atomic level, where the atoms are built upon each other. They're grown. They're not manufactured. They're fully integrated. Smooth contouring. That's what this thing is telling us here. All right. So this is the first attempt at a SolidWorks full-colored rendering, but let's see if we can do a little bit better here. Here is Joseph Wright's drawing, and if you look on the upper right-hand corner, we've peeled back the skin so you can see this 3-foot diameter column that started from the bottom of the craft and went all the way to the top of the craft. So there was this 3-foot diameter column. There were no seats in this thing whatsoever.
So whatever is the propulsion and power system would have to be within that column then?
Well, there are some reports indicating that the skin of the craft itself is the propulsion system. There's no quote-unquote engine to these things. It's the skin of the craft that is the propulsion system.
I guess then that would make material science incredibly important to understand the materials that make them up. Or make up the hulls, yeah. Make up
the hull of the craft. Okay, and then again, you can see the red dot, which is the attempted point of entry with a diamond tip drill bit. So here is Rudy's drawing. So this private went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which was Wright Field at the time. He was met with a friend of his that was inside the hangar, and this guy said, I got something I want to show you. I guess it was a breach of security, but he led him in the hangar. And this is private records management. And they got to this craft. It was sitting on the hangar floor. There was a tarp that was folded off to the right of the craft. There was a toolbox in the foreground. And then right next to the toolbox was an electric drill with diamond tip drill bits. And he got to see this thing.
I thought it was a jackhammer. I was
no,
they tried to jackhammer their way in. Let us in, aliens! Right?
That's right. All right, so what we want to do now.
Were they able to get inside of this thing?
As far as I know, they were not. But we want to take all the information from the primary witness, all the sketches, all the illustrations, and let's see if we can bring this to life in a full color illustration. Here's what we came up with. So this just kind of gives you an idea of what this may have looked like if we were actually there. And this
that's some good UFO nerd porn right there. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, right, so it's interesting, the light and the shadow, how the light and the shadows work on these 3D renderings,
Yep.
It's amazing looking craft, but when I see things like this, it leaves me with so many questions like, okay, so there's no seats in it, there's no control surfaces, there's no, it just look like a big empty inside bell or something.
Correct. That's correct.
And what would be the function of all these windows? Like, this is an observation platform, maybe?
It could be unmanned, although the other thing is that if there were ETs associated with it, the hatches on these craft are so fully integrated, you can't put a razor blade in there, and they blend in with the skin itself. You don't even know there's a hatch there. That's how fully integrated these hatches appear to be on a lot of these craft.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep. All right, so let's continue on here. Next case, Papagos Indian Reservation, west of Globe, Arizona, January 1947, north of Superstition Mountains. The primary witness served in the U.S. Navy during World War II, and this is UFO crash retrievals from the book, page 93, case A10. So that's what we're going to talk about right now. So they're going down this unimproved road. They're kind of like looking for some property, and there's two men in a Jeep, and they come across a military retrieval operation in the very beginning of the operation. And this thing was off to the left about 200 feet. It was 30 feet in diameter. It had it augured in at about a 45-degree angle. There was a dome on top, and then these what looked like square sections wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself with 2 rings. That's what this thing looked like. Now, they were challenged by at least 2 MPs and told to vacate the area immediately. And so this is, back in 47 timeframe. Now we want to go to a full color illustration, and this is what we came up with here. If we could be there back at when it actually took place.
That's interesting. And one of the things is there's so many depictions of UFOs like crashed like this, where they're like jammed into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
That's just weird and interesting to me. Do you think that that's a common occurrence, that when they crash, they like,
well, from what I can,
maybe from the speed, and if the craft is like impenetrable, then it just goes into the ground, gets or stuck in the side of a mountain or something?
From what the witnesses are telling us, there's 2 possibilities. Number 1, an actual crash, and number 2, a soft landing or a forced landing, because some of these are really not crashes, they're forced landings. That appears to be the case, and that is going to explain what angle they come in at, because if it's a forced landing, it's virtually a vertical descent down, and it wouldn't have an angle to it. But a lot of these cases are talking about, the witnesses are telling us that these things, when they got to them, they were tilted at an angle when they got to the retrieval operation.
Well, that's a weird way to crash.
Absolutely. All right, next one, White Sands Missile Range, July 4th, 1947. So we've already considered 2 cases basically prior to the Roswell timeframe. Now we're getting into the Roswell timeframe here. Technical Sergeant, U.S. Army Air Force. That's our source, and UFO Crash Retrievals, page 196. Now, this happened at night, and when this thing came down, they saw it from beginning to end. This thing was about 100 to 150 feet in diameter, White Sands Missile Range. The entire retrieval operation was excruciatingly well lit up. Okay, so they had light-alls, they had searchlights, they had spotlights, they had people taking still camera photographs, they had motion picture film reels going on, they had people with Geiger counters crawling up the side wall of the craft. This thing was well documented. Now, if this is true, according to the witness, I'm sure they still have this at a vault somewhere, whether it be Eglin Air Force Base, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, MacDill Air Force Base. This film could be pulled and could go to Congress. And
how do you transport 120 foot or 150 foot in diameter craft? And how heavy is that?
In some cases, they're buried at the site. And in other cases, they break apart into pie segments, like 3 to 4 segments of a pie, or like a pizza. And they transport the triangles to.
I've never heard that before. That's bizarro land.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's see if we can take this drawing and go to a full color illustration. And here's what we came up with. If we were there that night and could see it, so they have a film of this. They've got motion picture film reel. They've got probably black and white 8x10 glossies. They've got it. The craft.
Did you try a FOIA request? They're just going to give that to you. They're not going to give that out if they actually have it.
That's what we're up against. I mean, this is the crown jewels here. These guys play for keeps, and they're geniuses. They're very good. They're not going to let this go.
Michael, why do they always crash in the desert? Why not in a major city? Or
because a lot of times
they look for a barren place if they know they're going down, like a normal human pilot would.
They're monitoring our nuclear proliferation capabilities. That's one possibility.
Well, that's one possibility, sure.
Yes, correct. All right, let's move on to the next one. Actionable items. Since still photography and motion picture film was recorded of this event, senators and congressmen with the appropriate security clearances should track down and utilize this evidence for future public hearings. That's exactly what needs to happen. That's exactly what we need to happen here. Okay, next one.
Well, do you know, this Robert Salas, he demanded that they find paperwork about the Maelstrom incident, and they couldn't find anything. So, I mean, do you think they're telling the truth when they say they looked and they can't find it, or is that just an
Well,
excuse to not
in some instances,
divulge things?
I think they are telling the truth because they don't have a high enough security clearance to be briefed and read in on the programs. So in many cases, they are telling you the truth because they don't have access to it. They've never been read into the program, so they can't get the information. How can they release information they can't get access to? That's what we're up against too.
It's a mess.
This is something that has to get unraveled, and we're 80 years beyond the time frame now, and it's up to us. We're all working on a shoestring budget here, and time is ticking. Time is counting down. We've got to do something about this now, or all of us are going to be left in the dark. That's why it's imperative for us to really make a move on this. All right, so UFO crash retrievals, 1947, seen at a warehouse at Berkeley. Albert Bruce Collins is the primary eyewitness. He's deceased. He was a metallurgical engineer. Source for this is UFO crash retrievals, page 197. So it's in the book. If you want to learn more about it, it's in the book.
And this is a named source, but he's deceased.
Yep.
So we can't interview him
I
either.
know. That's the problem. That's the problem. All right. So this gentleman was at the right place at the right time when this egg-shaped craft backed in on an 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboy at Berkeley. This thing was about 30 feet across, 15 feet high. There was a hull breach on the side of the craft. So it looked like a cracked egg with a yolk in the center. There was a 3-foot diameter yolk in the center. There was a composite forward panel, and then there was another composite panel that wrapped around the outer circumference and followed the contour of the inner yolk itself. There was also what he mentioned, a hull breach on the lower right of the craft with shrapnel coming out of it. And so my question is this the craft itself, or is this the propulsion system of something that it fits in, which might be much larger in size? That's my question. So let's see if we can take this drawing and go to a full color illustration. And here's what we came up with if we were there and could see it. So somewhere they have this thing too, tucked away in some Air Force base or underground facility.
Then was the witness aware what happened to it to cause the damage, or no?
Well, he wouldn't talk too much, but he did give some minute details. He talked about the yoke in the center. He talked about there being 2 composite panels. There was kind of this ridge wrapped around the outer portion of the craft. He talked about the shrapnel coming out, but that's about all he would say. That's about all he would mention on it. So,
and did they bring him in specifically because he was a metal?
Because he was
expert?
a metallurgical engineer. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, I guess that makes sense.
Yep. So maybe it's still there. It's possible, but I'm sure they probably moved it by now.
At Berkeley?
Berkeley.
I'm gonna call. I'm gonna call.
Give them a call. Yeah.
We're gonna clip this out. I'm calling them tomorrow, and I'm gonna ask them about the alien egg ship.
There you go. We got to try, right? We got
From 1947. Yes.
Yep, that's right. Okay, Fort Polk, Louisiana, summer 1953. Herman Johnson, private in the U.S. Army. Case A1, page 80. Let's move to the map. Here's what the craft looked like. Now, they saw this craft come down from beginning to end. This was 30 feet across, almost identical to the one we just talked about here. It could be the same craft. Now, there was one humanoid being that was carried away on a stretcher. 3 others came out with the aid of military, police, and medical personnel. Now, these were about 3.5 feet tall. They were wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. They had helmets on. They also had what looked like gloves or mittens on, and they had, Stephen, no knee joint. It looked like they had no knee joint. So they had this stair-step staggering maneuver when they were stepping across the soil, which was still kind of a red, burnished, hot. It had a higher temperature.
This is a weird one.
It's a bizarre case, but this is within the Leonard Stringfield cases. And the beings that came out appeared to be trying to talk to their comrade that was being carried over to the ambulance truck. And this outer rim was still rotating around the craft itself when they got there. That's essentially, in a nutshell, this case. So let's go to the full color illustration and let's zoom in here and see if we can get some additional details. Now, you can see Joseph did a really good job because
this is just beautiful.
Yeah, it had this
nice
red burnished soil that was still hot and burning when they got there. And we'll go to the next one here. Here's what these beings look like with these
They look
one-piece
like the
type
Martians. Almost look like the Martians from Mars Attacks.
Yeah, they do. And they had these mittens on. Here is the single guy being carried off into the ambulance truck, and then we'll zoom in a little bit here, and we'll get a detailed view. And these are what these military sources are telling us that's going on. Already we've got like 5 or 6 cases in. Now, these craft are somewhere. I'm sure they don't put all their eggs in one basket. Primarily, all roads lead to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, but I'm sure they diversify their portfolio. So like we talked about before, MacDill Air Force Base, Edwards Air Force Base, Andrews Air Force Base. We could be looking at Wright-Patterson. So they're definitely going to spread these assets around so that they don't have a single point failure. Okay, next one. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1953. This is one of my very favorite cases here. Now, this is Michael Olvey. That's his name. He was an Army Reserve warrant officer. And this is UFO Crash Retrievals, page 15, abstract 18. So this gentleman, he is at the right place at the right time at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It's at night when this, and I don't know if this is the actual hangar complex. It could be, but I don't know. I can't prove it. Hangar complex number 4. And if you look at the arrow here, I've actually been inside that hangar. Here's a photograph of what that hangar looks like. And if you have the correct permissions, and if you call ahead far enough, you can actually get in this hangar. So,
that's interesting, because you're like the Air Force is aware of you as an aerospace historian.
Yeah,
right?
But I'm small fries though. That's okay.
But they if you call them, they'll just let you.
That's how I got in here. Now
purposes?
this is long before 9/11. I don't know if you can get in now, but back then you could.
Probably not.
Yeah. So a 4-engine DC-7 cargo aircraft, and this is like the closest photograph that I could find of this. It basically taxied up onto the tarmac. It went into the hangar. There's an aft port cargo bay door that opened up, and then there was a forklift that start offloading these wooden crates. So now what I want to do is I want to take you inside the hangar, and this is what it looked like. There were 3 crates on top with their tops taken off, and there were 3 bodies. They measured about 3.5 feet tall, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose, one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. Stephen, one of them was female, and he said that the bodies were being suspended off the bottom of the crates by this white netting material that protected the bodies from the freezer burn below of the dry ice. And he's seeing all this. He's looking in these crates, and he's shocked at what he's seeing. Now I want to take you to the full color illustration, and here's what we came up with from Joseph Wright.
Jeez.
He was also told about the debris from the crash retrieval operation as well.
So they put them on ice.
They put dry ice in the crates. Yes.
And are you aware of any kind of historical precedents that would like explain, like when they were experimenting with like monkeys and space capsules, if those went down and died, would they put those on ice too? Like,
No. Do not know.
So because I've heard of this ice thing from multiple cases. Dry ice, refrigerated compartments, formaldehyde compartments. I guess they would want to preserve the biological material for study if these were dead.
They have to get them out of the crates and into the cryogenic freezing underground cold storage vaults with the liquid nitrogen. They've got to store these things rapidly. And so I think this was like a in haste operation. They had to preserve these bodies. And so they had dry ice, and then from here they go right to the facility at Wright-Patterson. So if you want to know where the bodies are stored at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, follow the liquid nitrogen cooling tanks and pipes on the outside of the building.
Can you see those? Can you see? Did they have that you can verify and see?
It's in the book. It's in the book. The guy talks about this. He said he was there one day where this absolutely pungent odor and stench was coming through the base. And he saw military personnel like backing up to this building where they had these large tanks and pipes that were like piping in this formaldehyde chemical preservation fluid, probably with some liquid nitrogen too, but he could smell this acrid odor coming through the window. And it's like he kind of like put two and two together. They were moving the bodies from one location to another. And this is talked about in the book here. Now, let's see if we can go to top view down here, give you a little bit better idea what they might have looked like. One of them was female. He said she had breasts, or it had breasts. So he just assumed that it was female, but he did.
Leave it to a male to even notice tits on an alien, Michael Schratt, right?
Hey, I'm just going by what he said, you know. I'm just going by what he said. We have to remain historically accurate here. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Walker Air Force Base, New Mexico, April 12, 1954. Primary source, Air Force 1954 to 1955. UFO crash retrievals, page 82. All right, so this gentleman was at the field, at the Air Force Base, which used to be the 509th Bomb Group. We're talking about Roswell Army Airfield, which later became the Walker Air Force Base. He was told to board an H-19 helicopter like immediately, like right now. So he got in there. He was a photographer. They took off. They started heading north. They turned westbound, and they're about 40 to 50 miles northwest now. And when they got there, they saw this. This happened at night. There was a spotlight shining down from the bottom of the helicopter that illuminated this disc. It was about 40 to 50 feet in diameter, came in at about a 45-degree angle. There were 4 bodies recovered and 2 more inside for a grand total of 6 bodies. Now, when they landed the helicopter, this gentleman was taking photographs from the hatchway door on the helicopter, documenting this whole scene. When he landed, his first impression of the scene is that the entire place smelled like automobile battery acid. That was the very first thing he noticed. There were other crew members who were there, part of the retrieval operation, that were vomiting. I mean, it was a nasty scene. And so he was definitely photographing the entire scene. Now let's go to the full color illustration. May have looked like this. So this is another one of these cases where they've got the bodies and they've got the craft. Where are they? This is what we need to find out, Stephen. This is what we need to track down.
If they exist.
If they exist. Correct. If they exist. All right, next one. And this is a little bit drawn out here, but this is a very good case. December 1963, Cherry Point, North Carolina. This is a U.S. Marine. His name is Roy Baker. I do have his name. UFO crash retrievals, page 152, case 2. Now, this gentleman was told the beginning part of this is at Cherry Point, North Carolina. And he was told to board a plane with blacked out windows. And he flew 3 hours by plane to an undisclosed location that he didn't know where it was. And I'm going to show you the map of where they started. This is the Cherry Point, North Carolina. And when he got to this facility, they'd opened up these hangar doors, and what he saw shocked him. This was a fat hamburger-looking UFO, and it was 40 feet in diameter, 15 feet tall. It had a polished aluminum exterior to it. There were opaque elliptical windows wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft. There was a 1-inch lip from the skin of the craft itself to the outer exterior of the windows, quote unquote windows. And he said that this thing had an entryway hatch where the seams were so fully integrated you could not put a razor blade. We're talking about Cairo, Egypt here. The main blocks of the Giza Plateau of the Great Pyramid, you cannot put a razor blade. They're so fully integrated. That's what he was talking about here. Now, he also mentioned that there were attempted points of entry, and that's what you can see here. These dots are from his drawings where they tried to get in with a diamond tip drill, but that didn't work. They also tried a acetylene torch, and that didn't work. We're going to move on to the next slide here. Here's Joseph's drawing. This is the illustration that shows you what this thing actually looks like. Again, this thing was like virtually seamless. It looked like it was built on the atomic level, 40 feet in diameter. These are the three.
Can you go back, Bill, to that?
What's that?
Can you go back to the previous slide? Have you ever seen a Futuro house?
Yes, I've seen it. It looks identical to this.
It looks identical to a Futuro house.
Yes, it does. It does. You're
So
absolutely correct.
could this have been like a Futuro house that blew away in a, like a mistake?
Well,
Isn't
according,
that's a possibility, right?
maybe
Just
this is where they got the idea from. It's possible.
could
But
be.
they had a very difficult time getting in here. So these are the three things they used to get in. Diamond tip drill bit, failed. Settling torch, failed. They brought in two 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboys with these electrical generating devices. They hooked up these heavy gauge cables that went from the trailer all the way inside the hangar, and they put a laser on this thing, and that failed too. There was an incident involved with this laser operation. We'll talk about that. Now, this is, Stephen, the original sketch from the Marine. This is not my sketch. This is his original sketch. And we're going to break this down here. So when he got here, this is Roy Baker here. When he got there, he noticed that the craft was being supported off the hangar floor by scaffolding. That was the first thing. They had built a catwalk around this thing that you could walk around. And on the left, upper left, and right, upper right, you can see that this whole place was excruciatingly well lit. There were no shadows in this place. And you can see the entryway hatches. You've got the opaque elliptical windows. And then on the bottom of the craft, you've got these black areas. Those are pads that they use to support this thing where the catwalk entrance was, where they drop the thing into the catwalk lit there. These pads support the craft. This is his drawing. All right, so here's Michael Johnstone's drawing. He interviewed Roy Baker back in 1986. So this is a little bit more refined drawing. And you can see that you could walk under this craft, and there was an entry on the both left and right-hand side. And then I'm going to take you to the next one. This is my AutoCAD drawing now, cleaned up a little bit here. And I've done a detail view that shows you this 1-inch lip that you could feel with your thumb on the exterior of the craft compared to the exterior window itself. All right, so let's break down some of the bullet items here. Craft was seen at an undisclosed military location 3 hours by plane from Cherry Point, North Carolina. That's one. Entire craft was surrounded with what looked like standard military aircraft scaffolding. Correct, they did do that. A white circle was taped to the floor, which outlined the prohibited area for Air Force generals. Between 3 to 4 U.S. Marines guarded the craft while it was temporarily in the hangar. Next one, the windows of the craft were indented toward the interior, forming a 1-inch lip. We just talked about that. Next one, the primary eyewitness secretly took a photograph of the saucer, which was later lost in a flood. So we were this close, Stephen, from getting a real good photograph of this thing. This is back in '83, but it was lost in a flood. A team of between 20 to 50 engineers examined the craft, but were unable to gain access to the interior. All right, so here's what this thing most likely looked at based on all the evidence from the primary eyewitness. And you can see what Joseph done here. We've got a really good catwalk here. You can walk under this thing. We've got the entryways. This is the best we could do to represent what this thing looked like.
And I suppose if you were going to try to study this thing, you would put it up on a platform or, put a catwalk around it so that you could do whatever you're going to do, right?
Absolutely, yes. And this is one of these things that is a common denominator. It's a thread that runs through a lot of these cases, that when you hear about these things being examined at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, they always prop them off the hangar floor. They're, they want to look under these things. They want to test the tensile strength of these things. So they're usually always off the hangar floor. Okay, so here was the kind of the first pass drawing by John McNeil. Now you can see the white circle on the floor, and you can see the heavy gauge wire with the laser. And we'll talk about what happened with the laser here. Okay, so now what I want to do is we're going to pretend, Stephen, that we are a bumblebee. We can't be tracked. And we're going to infiltrate this whole facility here. We're going to get through the fence here, and we're going to go inside the hangar. So now we've got through the fence. We're making our way into the hangar now. Here we are. We see the military personnel. We've got the white lab coat technicians. We've got the MPs. We've got the scaffolding. Let's get a little bit closer here. You can even make out the 1-inch lip of the craft. We'll go to an overhead 45-degree look-down angle in a little bit here. Now you can see the seams here. attempted points of entry. Here's our 45-degree look down it. No, this is all from Roy Baker. This is all from the U.S. Marine who is telling us this. So this is not me making this up. We have his original sketch. I've got 3 pages of original notes.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Michael Johnstone, I did about a 3-hour videotape interview with him describing everything that Roy Baker had told him when he was there guarding this thing. All right, now, the last day that he was there, because this is December 1963, we're talking about days after Kennedy was assassinated, November 22nd, 1963, literally days later. The last day that he was there, they were taking this thing off the scaffolding and putting it on a cradle device, and then they were putting tarps over it and moving it to the next location. So that's what you see here. Here's the cradle device that they were making, and then they're starting to drape the tarp over the craft itself. Fully tarped now, and basically ready to move on to the next location. This was Rudy's drawing of where we kind of started here. And then we'll go over to this laser. Now, when they shone the laser on the craft, it bounced off and damaged the ceiling tile. This is what is reported by this particular Roy Baker.
So what, they were using like a cutting laser, like a CO2 laser?
They were trying to get into the craft. They were trying to get in. Now, when they moved the laser away, it was warm to the touch, but had no effect whatsoever. So if someone or some defense contractor has been able to reverse engineer the metallurgical sciences associated with this craft and integrate it into our stealth fighters, we'd be ruling the skies. And we probably are. We probably are.
Yeah, because laser weapons are quickly becoming a thing, aren't they?
Well, we're hearing about that a lot now. Absolutely. Definitely. So here's the incident in question. And then here's the original sketch by the primary eyewitness that illustrates this incident. He also mentioned that there were color-coded badges that these lab coat technicians were wearing. So if you had a green badge, you had access here, but you couldn't go here. If you had a yellow badge, you could go at this location, but you couldn't go here. If you had a red badge, you had access to the whole facility. So this is something that we've heard of before as well. Okay, now back to this camera. Now, his job was to frisk everybody who came into the facility. But one time, no one frisked him, and he was left alone with the craft. So he pulled out this Minox camera. He took a photograph of it. That photograph was lost in a flood in 1983. So we were this close of getting this thing. So I said, Joseph, you know what? Can you give me a replica of what this Minox photograph may have looked like? Here's what he came up with. Something that looked like this. A little bit grainy, kind of has this gray brownish tone to it. It may have looked something like this. And I'm sure they have really good black and white 8x10 glossies of the whole operation somewhere in a vault somewhere.
Well, wouldn't it be fair to say that, you know, like if these events are real and factual and really happening,
right?
They would want to highly document everything.
Of course they would.
Because the brass is not going to travel to the middle of, where was this, South Carolina or wherever it was, from Washington or whatever. They're going to want to get briefed on it. So you need briefing materials.
Precisely. They probably have copies.
There should be material with video, 8mm film, maybe, whatever.
Exactly.
Documentation for the brass, at least.
Of course. You know they made copies, and you know they moved them from base to base because they don't want to follow a single point failure. What happens if there's an explosion? What happens if there's an accident? What happens if there's a fire? They're going to lose all their paper documents. They're going to lose all their motion picture film reels, their photographs. They've got to diversify their portfolio. You know they've moved this stuff over from base to base. They've made copies. I'm sure of it. The problem we're running into, though, is that senators and congressmen on the Hill who are trying to get access to this data, who have not been read into these programs, they don't have a need to know, and they're never going to get to it. That's what we're running into.
Okay.
That's what we're running into. Okay, so he also mentioned that he nearly shot the United States Secretary of the Navy because he almost breached that circle on the floor. So I started tracking who this could be, and I believe it's Paul Nitz. He was Secretary of the Navy 1963 to to June 30th, 1967. That checks out. It may have been this gentleman. I can't prove it, but it may have been this gentleman. He would know about this if he was actually there. I don't know if he would talk. Now, 4-star Major General Melvin F. McNichol. Why am I bringing him into this whole thing? 4-star Major General, base commander at Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma. He was a real guy. Here's his obituary. Ex-Tinker Commander Melvin McNichol dies. The Daily, Oklahoma, July 11th, 1986. Okay, well, it turns out that Melvin McNichol was good friends with a very important person that's attached to the 1941 Cape Girardeau crash retrieval, Charlotte Mann, over to the left. They were good friends. They both had a mutual interest in UFOs. And so she turned to the general and said, General, we've been friends for years. We have this mutual interest in UFOs, and you've never told me anything. Are we still friends? I don't know anymore because you haven't told me anything. We've got this interest. You haven't said one word. He turns to Charlotte and says, Charlotte, if you ever repeat what I'm about to tell you, I'll deny it and I could lose my job. He proceeds to tell Charlotte 3 things. Number 1, he saw a UFO which was located in the West, which checks out with what Roy Baker had said, because he was on a plane that went from Cherry Point, North Carolina. 3 hours by plane would put you in the West. Number 2, he said he walked around a UFO on a catwalk, which was propped up by scaffolding. This is exactly what Roy Baker had said about what he had seen and guarded for 2 weeks. And then he said that bodies were recovered and one was still alive. Roy Baker overheard water cooler talk about bodies recovered and one was still alive. So when I heard this from Charlotte Mann 5 years ago at IUFOC, I said, I got it. I know that she didn't know Roy Baker, and I know Roy.
And just so everybody's clear, Charlotte Mann, is that the daughter or granddaughter of the
Charlotte Mann
minister from the Cape Girardeau case?
She actually held the photograph of the ET that was held up by the tourists and taken by the newspaper photographer. And that photograph was borrowed, quote unquote, to a photographic analysis expert and never returned. She described the photo in great detail, and that's where she comes into this whole equation. And it basically verifies what Roy Baker is telling us about what he had seen. And this is coming from Tinker Air Force Base, Melvin McNichol. And so when I heard this from Charlotte, I'm like, this is exactly what Roy Baker is. So I had independent secondary confirmation that this was a real case.
Well, that's interesting.
Yep. So it
you were
doesn't
able
just
to connect those dots by speaking to Charlotte Mann, right?
Yep. So
well, that's
it wasn't just falling on Roy Baker. We had at least someone else of high caliber, Melvin McNichol, who described virtually the identical situation. Fort Riley, Kansas, December 10th, 1964. Served in the infantry, 1st Division, Aaron, Quebec. UFO crash retrievals, page 24, abstract 20 by Leonard Stringfield. All right, here's the map of the location. Camp Forsyth is where this thing came down. The primary eyewitness went in onto one of these 6-by troop transport. He was with other MPs. They went about a mile down a road, got off this craft, walked into this open field at night, and what they saw was there was a UH-1 Huey helicopter hovering over the scene with a spotlight down, and they came across a hamburger-looking craft that was 48 feet in diameter, 18 feet tall. It had a series of what looked like square boxes jutting out from the outer circumference of the craft itself. There was a fin at the back end, and then what looked like an exhaust port at the back end of the fin itself. Here is my first pass illustration of what this thing looked like. Kind of a bizarre configuration.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen one with a fin except for those ones that were reportedly kind of Air Force.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And then here's Rudy's drawing of what this looked like. Now, he guarded this thing at night. He was there, and he said that there were people with Geiger counters walking around this craft checking for any residual radiation effects. And this Huey was crisscrossing this field until it got to the craft, and that's when it shone down this light. So I want to go to the next illustration, which gives you the full color rendering of what this thing actually looked like. This is the best we could come up with by Joseph Wright, who I always want to give him credit. So this is another one of these craft. that was apparently retrieved. Now, there was a secondary witness after the retrieval operation who saw this on an 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy leaving the base with chains and tarps over it, and he accidentally ran across this thing as they were shipping it out. So not only do we have the first-hand witness from the actual primary eyewitness, but we have a secondary witness as well. Here's the second pass here, and now you get to see this a little bit greater detail with the what could be some type of exhaust or some other type of port section on the bottom of the craft itself.
Yeah, we have a comment. Another disc stuck in the ground crashed at a 45-degree angle.
That's right. That's right.
So, and I don't know what that means, that so many of them crash in this sort of way.
It means that it's absolutely ludicrous to think that an ET civilization that could be 100 million years ahead of us in technology, evolution, would come all this way from another star system, navigating through black holes and quasars and gravity wells, different
radiation belts, asteroid
radiation
fields,
belts, all this. They've got all this knowledge from millions of years. They enter our atmosphere and they crash. That never made any sense to me. Maybe it doesn't make any sense to you, but it doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, some people, I've had this debate with others, and what I say is, no matter how, technologically advanced a species becomes, machines break. They malfunction. I mean, look at all the space shuttle disasters, and we put every effort into making them as safe as possible, but they still malfunction. So yeah, I've always been curious about that situation too, and it is, from a skeptical point of view, a great argument. Like they come millions of miles or light years,
right?
Fine through all the hazards of space, but as they enter our atmosphere and they have some kind of issue or problem. But there could be a whole bunch of explanations for what happens. We've heard the radar explanation, high power radar interferes with their systems. That we've heard that some were shot down.
Yeah, it appears,
lightning storms, but that makes no sense too. Like they can get through space, but a lightning storm crashes them.
Right.
And somebody else commented the big ones never crash. That's not entirely true. I mean, we've got 150-foot ones, but the smaller ones seem to be more common.
There really appears at this point, and we've got a lot of documented evidence to indicate that there are rogue elements within the military-industrial complex that are targeting, tracking, and shooting these things down for their military propulsion and free energy applications. That appears to be what's going on here. These things are just not crashing.
Well, I mean, I guess that's logical. If you knew that these things were there, you would want to try to grab them.
Exactly.
But wouldn't that also risk like an interstellar war? Like maybe that's an ill-advised way to go about things?
It does seem pretty crazy, right? But that just goes to show you that there's no hostile threat on their end, because if there was, it'd be done. It would be over.
Yeah, I've always assumed that if they have the technology to travel across vast star systems and different galaxies and all of this stuff, then we wouldn't stand a chance. So all those like alien invasion movies, like no.
Yeah, because they are promoting a threat narrative so that the defense contractors can cash in on a military bonanza. That's what it basically is. In a nutshell, that's what it is.
Well, yeah, and it's not just military. I mean, they could have. I've always kind of wondered about that. Like, there seems to be some focus on these things for military applications, but what about the energy applications? What about the physics applications, the science applications? What about their medical knowledge, their genetics knowledge, chemistry knowledge, whatever? A lot more than weapons there, or would be. I would think.
That's really the heart of the cover-up, isn't it? Because if you could reverse engineer the propulsion systems of these vehicles, you would overnight doom the oil industry, the coal fire industry.
I've heard those arguments before, but that depends a lot on free energy, and at least earthly free energy, I don't believe exists. I've seen too many charlatans in that world too.
I get you. I hear you.
Sounds too good to be true. It probably is.
All right. Now, this is what the secondary witness said that he saw. It was a U.S. Army M123 tractor trailer that was being used to transport this disc. So I just want to give people an illustration of what that craft looked like. They were also wearing these chemical biological protective suits in conjunction with the craft itself when they were moving it onto the tractor trailer. Now, that brings us to this case. Now, I've often debated whether I should even bother talking about this case, because it is one of the most bizarre cases within the Stringfield collection. But since it's part of the collection, it's part of the historical legacy, it belongs in this presentation. So this is the Air Force Museum, Dayton, Ohio, 1965. If you want to read about this, it's page 190, page 93, case A11. All right, so I'm going to set up the scene here. There's a couple that goes to the Air Force Museum, and they're looking at the V-2 rocket display. So this is the exact one that they were looking at. This is the very same one. They're looking at this rocket display, and all of a sudden, the husband bails on the wife, and she's left looking at this rocket display. You know, what's she going to do there? I mean, she's just completely stranded and alone. Her husband left her, you know, and he's walking around. He goes walking through the interior corridors of the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, and he somehow goes through these double doors. And when he goes through these double doors, he is met with the shock of his life. He sees this. He sees this ET.
That's bizarre.
He was about 3.5 feet tall. He was wearing a one-piece, tight-fitting Mercury spacesuit with a helmet on. He was pointing his index finger to this guy's face. He had oversized head, oversized eyes, heavy brow ridge, slit-furrowed nose, minute mouth. And within about 4 seconds of this gentleman encountering this ET being, you could call him, that was wandering the back corridors of the Air Force Museum, believe it or not, all these alarms and buzzers started going off in the Air Force Museum. And these MPs, which you see on the right bottom blow-up enhancement here, started ushering people out of the museum while this wife is still looking at the V-2 rocket display. So whatever this being was had escaped its underground containment facility and was wandering the back corridors of the Air Force Museum, believe it or not. It's part of the Stringfield cases. So does this indicate that they have an underground facility that is somewhat connected by an underground tunnel? It's what it appears to be. But that's coming from this witness.
But this is a bizarre story. So what? The alien got out of the secret base, yes, and was just running around, yes, in a, yes, museum.
I know it sounds crazy, but it's.
Well, that's one of those things that might believe it, because it's so bizarre. Who would make that up?
It's crazy. It's crazy. There you go. So, anyway, okay, let's go to the next one. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, 1966, civil service electrician. This is page 17, abstract 13. All right, now, this gentleman had come back at night. He was this contractor, electrician, working at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and he had stolen a photograph, 8x10 black and white portrait of a scene somewhere in the Southwest, probably Arizona. Off to the left, there was what looked like a white lab coat technician wearing khakis. The other one was kind of a military personnel. He sort of had these boots on, and they were holding up by their wrists this ET body, about 4 feet tall, one-piece tight-fitting flight suit that was fully integrated to his body, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, just like we've heard of before. He shows his son this photograph, completely shocks his son. The next morning, he brought the photograph back. They discovered it was missing, and he was fired on the spot. He went home and was a broken man. But this is in the Stringfield cases. So we know they've got the photographs. We know they've got the photographs. The witnesses are telling us that they have the bodies, the debris, and the craft. So they've got all three. And this is going to be what it takes to break the cosmic Watergate, absolutely like how our good friend Stanton Friedman had talked about for decades.
Well, that one's interesting.
Okay, next one. Southwest, July 3rd, 1967. Marine, rank private first class. All right, so bottom line is this Marine was told to guard this what looked like temporary hangar, Quonset-style hut. And by day 3, this is page 86, case A5 in the book, By day 3, curiosity got the best of him. So he opened up this flap and he looked inside, and he saw this 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft on the ground in this facility, in this hangar. There was a dome on top. Off to the foreground that you see in this drawing here by Rudy, they had multiple workbenches set up with calipers, micrometers. They had components on there. They had equipment on there. There were microscopes on there, white lab coat technicians. Off to the right, there was a walk-in freezer, and they had body bags on the ground. And he saw all this, and he got in huge trouble about this from the leader of the MPs here. Now, let's go to a full-color illustration to give you an idea of what this looked like. And this is what we came up with here by Joel Payne.
Well, that's interesting.
Just another case where they've got the craft. Now, he didn't see any bodies, but he did see the body bags. So it's an assumption that there were bodies, ET bodies, associated with this particular retrieval operation back in 1967 in the Southwest, most likely Arizona. Another case in point. Okay. Fort Hood, Texas, late 1960s, private pilot. This is UFO crash retrievals, page 91. All right, now the setup is we want to talk about Fort Hood, Texas. Something absolutely is going on at Fort Hood. All right, now we want to talk about within Fort Hood is something called Robert Gray Army Airfield. And this Cessna 172 pilot, he had to make an emergency landing on an unimproved runway. Somehow something happened. He might have had an engine failure, but bottom line is he had to make an emergency landing. And when he got there, you see him on the upper left. When he landed at this prohibited area, he was met within 30 seconds with a Jeep and 2 MPs pointing their pistols at him. And you can see this guy with his hands up right by the Cessna 172. Now, while all this is going on, he notices this massive, and I'm talking massive, 400-foot wide by 400-foot wide bypass door that opens up. Now, you would never know that there's an underground facility in here because the texture on top of this bypass door matched the surrounding landscape. There were bushes and rocks and trees, and you would never know there's anything there. He sees all this going on. He said that inside this facility were what looked like Cray computers. And he also noticed CH-47 Chinook helicopters, and this is something that's talked about by multiple eyewitnesses. They see UFOs departing Fort Hood being quote-unquote escorted by military helicopters. Like it's one of ours that they're test flying. That's what the witnesses are telling us that's going on here. Yep. So
yeah,
we've also...
And these are the craft he describes? Because one of them looks like one from the famous case, right?
Well, when you extrapolate the data, now Cash-Landrum obviously happened years later, but this would have been an interesting jumping off point for some of our ARV type craft that are being tested. We've got Eddie Laxon craft, 1966. We've got other craft. And then we've also heard that a lot of these underground facilities are connected by high-speed tube shuttle system. That's something that's been talked about too. Now he's watching all this and seeing all this. Now, let's see if we can go to a full color illustration. Now, is there a top secret underground facility located at Gray Army Airfield? That's the question here. Now, within the book, this is page 100, and I'm just going to read this really quickly here.
Sure.
They interviewed a colonel. It says the colonel stated that underground installations, as well as isolated areas of military reservations, have squadrons of unmarked helicopters which have sophisticated instrumentation on board that are dispatched to areas of UFO activity to monitor these craft or airlift them out of the area if one has malfunctioned. Yeah, just like Cash-Landrum. Yeah, okay, next one. Quote, the technology that is being applied in this underground complex, talking about Fort Hood here, would remind someone of a science fiction thriller. It is unbelievable what they know and can do from this area. This is Tommy Blonde, page 92, who interviewed this colonel. So, I mean, we're talking about pregnant with possibilities here. So we've got underground facility. We've got helicopters escorting UFOs in a test flight application. We've got military malfunction UFOs, and then we've got an underground complex that is likened to science fiction thriller. This is all what we've heard about for years. These are the type craft that are involved in a lot of these retrieval operations.
Chinooks, yeah.
For instance, the CH-47 Chinook that was seen by Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and Colby Landrum, December 29th, 1980, Huffman, Texas. Here is the craft itself. Now, this thing was about 90 feet tall. It looked like a water tower. It actually looked like two ice cream cones connected with the wide ends. There appeared to be a flat section where they're joined in the center with what looked like windows wrapped around the outer portion of the craft itself. Now, when they parked the car around 9 p.m., this is December 29th, 1980, Huffman, Texas. It's cold outside, so Betty Cash gets out of the vehicle because they thought this was JC returning. They absolutely thought that this was a second coming. They thought this was Jesus Christ returning. They were horrified about what they were seeing here. Vicki was screaming, telling Betty to slam on the brakes. Don't try to drive. She was 150 feet in front of this thing. She gets out of the car, opens up the car door, goes to the hood, looks at this thing. It was emitting a beeping noise like a proximity indicator. And then every time this thing would bob down close to the pavement, there was a blue flame that came out the bottom and it would bob back up again. And this repeated itself over and over again. By this time, Betty Cash goes back to the driver's side door. She puts her hand on the latch of the door and burns her hand. This is wintertime. She burns her hand. She gets inside the vehicle, closes the door. It's so hot inside the vehicle, they had to turn the air on. Okay. Now this thing kind of goes off to the side. Within a few minutes later, no less than 23 double rotor CH-47 helicopters go after this thing, including at least 2 UH-1 helicopters and a Sikorsky sky crane.
Yeah, and this is according to multiple witnesses. And,
yep.
And one of the things that's always fascinated me about this case is, do you know, Michael, like what would it cost to fly that many helicopters in a military operation?
Of
so
course.
They're not doing that for, something not very extraordinary, I would think. And
of course.
Cash-Landrum, somebody mentioned in the live chat that they've always thought it was a malfunctioning nuclear-powered craft, and I've always thought that as well because of the physical effects on the witnesses that appeared to be
correct.
Something like radiation sickness they suffered from.
It appears that there was a hull breach on the side of the craft, a hybrid atomic-powered spacecraft that was spewing out fissionable material, and that caused the acute radiation sickness by all three witnesses. That appears to be the case here. Now, there's a couple of points that we should mention. Number one, at least some of these helicopter pilots are alive. If you take 23 helicopters, each having a crew of 4, you add in this UH-1s and you add in the Sikorsky, we're talking about, well over 100 people here. Not all of them are dead. Some of these pilots and co-pilots and crew members could be called upon to testify. And someday this case is going to get its day in court. I don't know when, I don't know where, but someday this case is going to get its case in court. Now,
yeah, and for those unaware, one of the other things that I thought was really strange, because I love a good mystery, and this one is one of those enduring mysteries. They replaced the road not once, but twice.
Yeah.
I verified that with the city officials.
You did.
And they didn't have a good story for why they replaced the road in twice in such a short time frame. But people have speculated that the road was irradiated by the exhaust coming out of this nuclear-powered craft somehow.
Very few people know that, Stephen. I'm glad you mentioned that because, yes, that's true. John Schuessler, he actually took a photograph of the burn mark. I'm still trying to get a copy of that, but he's got a photograph of the burn mark. So after this event took place, the Army Corps of Engineers came in, they dug up where that black mark was, and they repaved it. And then 2 weeks later, they did it again. They did it twice.
Yeah, and that makes no sense. You don't repave a road twice in 2 weeks for no reason.
That's right. Now, the other thing is, when all this was going on, Vicki Landrum, that you can see off to the left of John Schuessler in this newspaper clipping here, Clarion Ledger, December 25th, 1983, Vicki Landrum put her hand up against the dashboard, and her hand melted into the dashboard, and those finger marks are still in the dashboard today. And the other point is that the U.S. Army tried to buy Betty Cash's car. If there's nothing to it, why would they want to buy her car?
Yeah, yeah. But don't you think that it's just as likely, especially because of the research that was being done into nuclear-powered spacecraft,
Yes.
that it's just as likely that it was some kind of black project than it was aliens, or more likely to me to be that.
Well, there are some who say that this was an ET craft that was retrofitted with an atomic propulsion system, and there were 3 pilots. That's what I've heard.
I've heard that from Richard Doty, too.
Yeah, so that could be the case. Bottom line is there is a military component to this case, without a doubt. Here's the map on how.
And didn't, just for the benefit of clarity, didn't the military deny that there were any Chinook helicopters operating in the area?
The case was thrown out in the court, so Betty Cash never got to actually bring the case to court. It was thrown out by the judge. He said there was no indication that the military was involved whatsoever. They could not find no evidence that the military was there, despite the fact that there were other witnesses that saw the helicopters. This case has not been solved to this very day. After all,
like I said, this one's an enduring mystery. Absolutely, yeah.
This is top 3 within ufology, top 3 without a doubt. All right, so here's what this underground facility looks like to the best of my ability now. This is Joel's illustration. So off to the left, you see the 172. If you look closely, you can see the pilot with his hands up, and then the MPs with pistols pointed at him. Off to the right, you've got a C-130. Now, what this is it's an underground runway. You can land an F-16 in here. You can land a C-130 in here. That's how big this thing is. If you look at this bypass door just to the right of the Cessna 172, you can see that the texture of the top of the bypass door matches perfectly and blends in with the surrounding landscape. Bottom right, you've got the tube shuttle, high-speed shuttle system. Off to the left, you've got the 2 CH-47 Chinooks. He said that there were what looked like robots patrolling the ground runway. We've got Cash-Landrum incident. This is later, of course. And then we brought in Eddie Lax in 1966 case as well.
That's interesting.
But yeah, this is what the witnesses are telling us, that there is this underground facility here. All right, next one, California.
Well, at least there's no porta potties on the top side.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. Inside joke.
California City, summer 1971. Debbie Clayton is the primary eyewitness, page 233. Now, this is very near Edwards Air Force Base. They heard a craft come down, and there were not too many people in the surrounding area. So they all went to this craft. Now, this thing was about 10 feet wide, 5 feet tall. It kind of had this mushroom section, rolling circumference on the bottom. Kind of looked like the top of a mushroom. So these witnesses go up to this craft. They see the retrieval operation. They're very close. They're taking photographs. And this Air Force personnel grabs this photograph, throws it to the ground, orders these people away. They saw the entire retrieval operation. And this is near Edwards Air Force Base. So is this one of ours that had a malfunction test flight? We don't know, but it's part of the Stringfield cases. Next one, Norton Air Force Base. This is good. 1973, Air Force photographer. Now this photographer, this is page 160, case 14. He was based in Hawaii. He had his security clearance upgraded. He flew to Norton Air Force Base. He was joined by another photographer. They go in this Air Force car and they drive about 1 hour from Norton Air Force Base. And then all of a sudden, Stephen, the car stops dead, just completely stops. And then it drops down a couple of levels to an underground facility. And that's what this looked like here. They get out of the car. They're told to go to this other room, disrobe naked, and get into these white lab technician smocks. They come back out and they see in this large underground facility a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that's hoisted above the ground by a crane, which has a netting. And their job was to go into a cherry picker, go inside the entryway hatch, and photograph the interior of the craft with all these buttons and switches and display panels. That's what you see in the enlarged view on the upper left. Now, when all this was done, before we talk about the autopsy, I want to give you the exact quote by the photographer. He said that when he got inside, quote, it looked like he could have thrown a football as hard as he could and still not hit the other side. This thing was only 30 feet in diameter. So there was some type of a space-time warp going on within this craft that made it look 10 times larger on the interior than it did on the exterior. Now, when they got done photographing the interior, they were led to another facility in the same underground complex where they were autopsying 3 bodies. They were told to photograph the autopsy. So what I want to do now is I'm going to take you inside this facility. Here we see our photographers, and we've got an overhead crane in this illustration by Joseph Wright. I'm going to take you inside the craft now. This thing is only 30 feet in diameter. This is a blow-up of the craft itself. And now we're on the inside, and this may have been what it looked like on the inside. You could throw a football here and not hit the other side. That's what this.
So it's the TARDIS.
It's the best we could come up with from the eyewitness testimony. So, and
this descriptions like this are interesting, but I guess if they can manipulate space time, I guess they can manipulate some kind of dimensional space to create a small craft on the outside, big craft on the inside.
Right.
And didn't we just hear this described by somebody, like maybe it was Rep Timber Chet or somebody else?
This is not an isolated incident. Other people have described the same phenomenon where these things look like huge cavernous on the inside, but it's still only 30 feet in diameter. So something is going on within these crafts, some type of magnetic, electromagnetic, optical field going on, gravity warp, something going on. All right, now, after they got done all the photograph, they were told to photograph an autopsy being taken place. And when the scalpel pierced the skin of one of these bodies, there was a green fluid that came out, according to the primary eyewitness. Now, there were at least 3 bodies.
You know who else has green blood? Don't Vulcans have green blood?
Don't know. I think
they do. Somebody correct me in the live chat.
Okay.
Maybe they were Vulcans? No? I'm just teasing you.
Don't know. But again, we're just trying to maintain historical evidence.
I mean, it's interesting. They're great illustrations, great 3D illustrations.
Got to give credit to the artists here. All right, so this is Los Angeles Times, July 11th, 1972. Tube shuttle using electromagnetic suspension. Look at what the subheading is here. LA to New York in half an hour. 10,000-mile-an-hour tunnel train plan developed. This is that in 1972 by LA Times. They're already talking about this. Let's do a blow up here. This is what this thing looks like. And we pour billions of dollars into these underground facilities. It's a done deal. They've already got it. Now, how do we know this? If you
if you were going 10,000 miles an hour, wouldn't that be too much G's for you to take? But not
if you slowly add the G's. You could be at 1G acceleration the whole way. You don't have to be a spark on a grinding wheel.
I'm sorry to ask. I'm just not a physicist, so I would think that's a tremendous rate of speed to put a human in a metal tube and hope for the best.
I'm not a physicist either, but if you progressively accelerate, then you wouldn't have these tremendous G's.
Okay.
The guys on the rocket cars, they had like really tremendous speed, but if you progressively accelerate like you do in your car, you wouldn't kill yourself. You could eventually get to that fast, but it wouldn't be an instantaneous acceleration. There's where you have G lock and G blackout. Anything past 9 Gs.
And I guess it gets complicated when you're talking about mag lift because then there's no resistance.
Yeah, and you suck out the air because it's a vacuum, and you slowly accelerate at 1G, and you're fine. You don't have these 9G accelerations where you black out. They figured it out. They've done it. How can we prove this through any kind of reference work here? Project RAN, Proceedings of the Second Protective Construction Symposium, Deep Underground Construction, Volume 2. This is from 1959, March 24th, 5th, and 26th. Here's what they say, Steve. Check this out. It says, just as airplanes, ships, and automobiles have given man mastery of the surface of the earth, tunnel boring machines and shaft sinkers will give him access to the subterranean world. It is our aim to provide machines which will supply the ever-increasing demand in mining and construction of underground facilities. So they're telling us in their own documents that they've got these tunnel boring machines, subterranean world, underground facilities.
Or they're developing them at least.
Or they're developing them, correct. Okay, actionable item here. Senators and congressmen with the appropriate security clearances should locate this facility, find out what is stored there, and what other underground installations this might be connected to. I think we've got time for a couple more here. Sure. U.S. Marine Corps diver off the coast of Okinawa, 1991. Now, I want to preface that this is 1.5 miles down. We're talking deep here. This diver, he was in a submersible vehicle. They go down 1.5 miles, and what they see is a 50-foot per side triangle way down here. Now, let's go to the illustration. This is what this craft looked like.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it had hieroglyphic writing written on the side of the craft. They were in one of these DSRV vehicles at 1.5 mile depth. This thing looked like it had been there for approximately 50 years, and they gauged that by how much it was embedded into the sand and bottom of the soil there at the bottom of the ocean. That's how they gauged how long this thing was there. Now let's go to the full color illustration of what this may have looked like. They did retrieve the triangle, and they appeared to be trying to decipher what these hieroglyphic letters mean on the side of the craft. So they've got this one too. Not only do they have the discs, the triangles, the boomerangs, and the platforms, but they've got these underground, underwater craft as well.
And when you say they try to decide this, I always have a problem with this one, Michael. Look, let's talk about this for a minute.
Sure.
There's multiple cases where people say there's hieroglyphs or something on the side of the craft, and they try to decipher them. But if we don't have a Rosetta Stone,
correct,
all we have is earthly references, their language could be complete gibberish to us.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And all they can do is piecemeal other crash retrievals that also have writing on the side as well, and try to make any kind of sense of it. Now, I don't know how they can do that. I don't even know if they're the same type writing. Who knows? But I'm sure they have a database of writing that they've recovered on the side of these craft. That would be a very difficult stretch and bridge.
Yeah, I mean, I once met a linguist, and I asked the linguist that I met, expert in languages, like, if you encountered like alien writing, for example, would you have any hope of deciphering it? And he said, probably not, unless they used, similar word structure to us, similar symbology to us. It would be a very difficult thing to do because you don't have a frame of reference.
Correct.
Right?
This would have predated Akkadian and Sumerian clay tablets for sure.
Oh, that's interesting.
So they wouldn't have anything to reference it to. So again, who knows what they were able to discover. McClellan Air Force Base, California, 1973. This comes from Chris Kofi via test pilot astronaut Ellison Onizuka, page 153, case 3. All right, so bottom line is test pilot, later astronaut Ellison Onizuka, he is at McClellan Air Force Base, 1973. They go into a briefing room in one of these back hangars here in this photograph. There's about 12 other pilots with them. There's a U.S. Air Force general in the back of the room with a movie projector. The lights go off, and here's Ellison Onizuka right here. He was a test pilot before he was an astronaut. And on the forward wall, this black and white film appears, and it shows 2 alien bodies on concrete slabs being autopsied. And Ellison Onizuka, he's over to the left here, and his words were, quote unquote, "Oh my God." He could not believe what he was seeing. And this was like a retrieval operation. A few minutes later, the lights go back on, and they're told not to talk about what they saw. There was no briefing. There was no debriefing, nothing. Now, this is
that's bizarre, but don't you think that, I mean, it's a play devil's advocate. Couldn't that have been some sort of psyop to see how people would react to that or something?
Very good. Yeah, this is a film that has been played at multiple U.S. military Air Force bases and is used as a quote-unquote trial balloon to gauge the reaction of our top military pilots. Could they handle this new reality? If they can't handle it, can the public handle it? So is this a trial balloon for bringing this reality out? that appears to be the case here. Now, there's another piece of this puzzle at the same McClellan Air Force Base. This is Open Minds. They reported this August 19th, 2014. David Armstrong claims his aunt used to work for a top secret UFO records library at McClellan Air Force Base. In his 20s, Armstrong went to visit her, and knowing he had an interest in the subject, Armstrong says his aunt let him look at the files in this video. Okay, and it talks about what he saw. Photographs, files, case reports of UFOs being there. It's no longer an Air Force base, but at that time, when he was there with his aunt, she let him go through the library and he saw these things. So there appears to be some type of classified UFO library at one time at McClellan Air Force Base. So here is astronaut Ellison Unizuka. Now, when Chris Kofi told Leonard Stringfield about this, he immediately made plans to interview the astronaut. But unfortunately, 2
He was
weeks
on the
prior
Challenger,
to, he died in the Challenger explosion back on January 28th, 1986. So we were this close to getting his testimony from an astronaut. Now, I tracked down his widow, and I sent her a letter with that description and Rudy's drawing. I sent it to her. I never got a response. So I don't know if she received my letter or she didn't want to reply, or Ellison never told her, but she never replied to me. So I gave it a college try. Would have been good to get her.
I don't know if you heard this news, but we'll break in here because this is breaking news. Apparently, Falcon Space Lab, Mark Sokol, who many of our viewers and you, Michael, may be familiar with, he's the person running that lab and friends with the alien scientist.
Mm-hmm.
He was just raided by the FBI, who was looking for reported enriched uranium. And it was just on the news.
Okay.
Wow, that's something. And for those unaware, they're running a lot of weird experiments. So maybe, I don't know what happened there, but we'll off air we'll dig into that and bring you more news about that. Thanks, Sixth Sense.
So do you remember where you were, Stephen? January?
Yes, I was. And for those unaware, I've talked to I've said this to my audience many times, but Michael, maybe you weren't aware. When I was a child, I was just completely and totally fascinated with science and model rockets. And I got in a lot of trouble with what's called rocket candy, where you make your own solid rocket motors out of stump remover and sugar. And anyway, I was a huge space fan, and I remember exactly to this day, the teacher wheeled the television in, and we were all sitting there watching it. And I knew right away that those people were all dead. Mm-hmm. And I believe I cried. I was very, very young child, but it was very sad because we had that teacher, and we were going to have she was going to give lessons to children all over America from space. And I just remember thinking that was somebody's mom, Krista
McAuliffe. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. God bless her. Rest in peace.
Now they know because they found at least 2 oxygen packs at the bottom of the ocean. They were turned on manually. They know that at least some of the astronauts survived the initial explosion. And the part that I feel is really tragic is if you take and you factor in the newspaper clippings from 1954 talking about cracking the gravity barrier, and then you factor in March 1966 case of Eddie Laxon, who came across one of ours that hovered off the ground, took off like a spark on a grinding wheel. They already had this technology to make liquid and solid rockets obsolete by October 1954.
Well, I would use the term allegedly.
Well,
yeah.
This is
what if they did and they stuck with these rockets, these people would still be alive today.
They'd still be alive today. Yeah, they survived the explosion. They rode the whole thing down, and basically terminal velocity. They had about 180 to 220 miles an hour. They hit at about 200 Gs, and that's when their seats ripped off the bulkhead and went right to the forward section. They could have survived. They knew about burning of the O-rings prior to Challenger, and it could have been totally avoided. So the point is, we already had the technology to make these things obsolete long before 1986. All right, next one. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, 1974. This is page 327. Now, I'll set this up real quick. There was a new hire. She's off to the left. They're at a dinner engagement. Her new boss is off to the right. She's still got 2 weeks left on her other job. And, they're talking about UFOs. And this woman is getting beaten up here. She's getting ridiculed. And so he turns to his new hire and says, you want to see the evidence? And she says, now? He says, yeah, now, right now.
Yeah, I've heard this one.
He brings her in his car. They drive to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He had the correct security clearances and key card entries. He puts his key card into this card reader and a door opens up. He goes into a long corridor with her by his side. They get to another doorway. He pulls out the same key card, puts it into the reader. The door opens up and they go to an underground vault at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He proceeds to open up one of these, you could say, drawers or formaldehyde preservation areas, and this body comes out in a half preserved in a body bag, and she sees this body. She is absolutely shocked to her core. She can't believe what she's seeing. This is all on page 327. He drives her back home, and remember, she's still got 2 weeks. Now, when she shows up to the business 2 weeks later, expecting to see her supervisor who showed her the body, the guy died and there was no obituary in the obituaries. They have no idea where this guy was. He completely disappeared off the radar screen back in 1974. So, do we trust the testimony of this woman? Why would she lie about this?
Well, did she give the name of the guy? Because we could check into.
No, they have no reference of that guy ever existing.
Wow.
He completely disappeared off the radar screen. Completely.
So he got men in blacked because he showed her the body. Do you think he did this to get laid? Like, hey, I'll show you some aliens, right?
I don't know. I can't comment on that.
New hot chick at work. Come on, I'll show you the aliens. It is a little far-fetched, right? But I guess, you never underestimate a guy trying to get with a chick, right?
That part of it is not in the account, so I can't comment on that. But all right, let's move on here. Okay, Wright-Patterson. This is retired Air Force pilot, late 1950s. He talked about this. This was conducted by Edward Cameron Jr., who interviewed the Air Force pilot. And he claims he saw a 5 to 6 minute movie film clip that depicted a 60-foot diameter dish-shaped craft in an Air Force hangar. There was a 10-foot wide gash where we believe the propulsion system came out. This is a retrieval operation. There were 3 bodies recovered, and they were covered on the side of the craft. But then he said that the video, this movie clip, kind of peered off to the side, and they showed a display screen with iconology written on the inside wall of this display screen. So here's another case where they've got the body, they've got the craft, they've got the propulsion system. And this needs to be followed up by congressmen, senators, someone who can breach the security to get to this evidence. Here's a blow up of what this might have looked like on the inside, and then the upper section with the engine itself.
That's a weird one, yeah.
1962, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, this is from the 354th Tactical Aircraft Fighter Wing. I trust our fighter pilots. These are some of our most reliable witnesses. Now, they were looking for a mobile racquetball court. When you move one particular wall in a hangar, it completes this 4-wall racquetball court. They were looking for this thing. So they're going down. They were all jogging. There was about 5 of them jogging down a row of hangars at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. One of these hangar doors was open, and when they ran in, they saw this craft. It was about 15 feet in diameter. It looked like 2 track and field discs put together, and he said that it was being suspended off the floor by engine test stands. This is page 88, case A6. The leader of the flight tactical fighter squadron was challenged by the guard, said that you're not supposed to be there. They did an about face and left. But what this guy said was interesting. This is from the fighter squadron leader here. The guard challenged by saying, "I don't think you're supposed to be here, sir." I replied to the affirmative, and we turned about face and departed, mumbling to ourselves that the good old U.S. had developed or had all along flying saucers in service. I tend to trust these pilots.
Yeah, and I can imagine if you've seen that and knowing about all the UFO that people were seeing, that, many people will go, oh, okay, so this explains it. The U.S. has this stuff. It's not aliens or something else. And this very well could be some sort of experimental aircraft.
Correct. Correct. Certainly.
Yeah.
Okay. The other Roswell UFO crash on Texas-Mexican border, 1955, across the Texas-Mexican border south of Del Rio, Texas. And this is by Ruben Uriarte and Noe Torres. I know both of them. Bottom line is there were B-47s heading westbound over South Texas. They were being escorted by at least 2 F-86 Sabre jets. And this dish-shaped craft comes screaming by their flight path. One of the F-86 breaks away, which you see here in the cover of the book. He goes down kind of almost, not really treetop level, but flies over the scene. He goes and asks for permission to land at Carswell Air Force Base, gets out of the F-86, goes to Corsica Airport, where he's joined by a fellow friend of his. They get in a 2-seat Aranca tail dragger, fly back to the crash site before it gets dark. So here you see Del Rio, Texas. Here you see the Rio Grande River. And then just on the left side of the Rio Grande is where this craft came down. So this is the map of where this thing came down. And when they landed, this is what they saw. This is about 25 feet in diameter. This is from the Air Force pilot. About 5 feet tall. It had a dome that popped off. The Mexican military got to the scene before the American military.
Oh, I'm familiar with this case, yep. Yes.
They got there first. And there was a debris trail where this thing kind of came in. And the pilot of the Aranca, who is our primary witness, said that as it was getting dark, it was starting to get colder, and the Mexican military was taking blankets from the back of the 6x troop transport that you see off to the left. They were laying the blankets onto the debris, which was still warm, and then putting the blankets onto their bodies to warm them. A very bizarre little point, but I think it's interesting to mention that. Now, he also said that
maybe they were cold. They didn't want them to be cold.
Yep.
I mean, if you're in a situation where you have bodies at a crash site, it would be natural to cover the bodies with something, wouldn't it?
Well, these bodies were burnt and they were mangled. This
Wow.
is not a nice scene. This is actually a gruesome scene. But they were putting the blankets on their own bodies to warm themselves, not the bodies of the people.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Okay.
No, that's okay. So what I want to do now is I want to zoom in, give you a better look at the bodies here, and then let's see if we can go to a full color illustration. But the primary eyewitness is Air Force pilot Robert Willingham, quote unquote, arms that look like broomsticks. That's what these ETs had, arms very thin, squiggly looking. They've been described as looking like Casper the Ghost. That's what these things look like. So here's the full color illustration. Shows you the craft. We've got the dome popped off. We've got the debris trail. We've got the 6x troop transport. And now,
at least they won't have any trouble getting inside this one.
Nope.
Right?
They could get inside this one. Yep, that's right.
That's bizarre. So the dome is just dropped off, I guess. Maybe the force of the impact.
Kind of more of a shallow anger, but they absolutely did report that the dome popped off and that there was a breach on the side. He looked in. He saw the bodies. And I'm going to zoom in here so you can get a better idea of what these bodies look like. They were mangled. They were burnt. It was not a pretty sight. It was not for the faint of heart. But this is what this Air Force pilot is telling us. These witnesses are telling us here. Next one, Koyama incident. Noe Torres. He wrote the book, UFO Crash near Presidio, Texas. So this is an interesting case. Now, this is coming from the south, heading toward Texas. A craft was going 2,530 miles an hour. It was at 75,000 feet. There was a concurrent Cessna 172 heading southbound. The craft dropped down from 75,000 feet to the exact altitude that the 172 was at, and there was a mid-air collision. The intelligence agencies were monitoring all of this. So the National Security Agency, Central Intelligence Agency, they were monitoring the radio chatter from the Mexican military. And the Mexican military got to the scene first. They were loading up the craft onto a lowboy tractor trailer. They had a Jeep up front, kind of a 6x troop transport in back. And this convoy was going down the dirt road. And then, Stephen, I think you know what happened here. This thing was 16 feet in diameter. The entire convoy stopped completely. we had one of our reconnaissance birds fly over the site, and all of the Mexican soldiers were dead.
We're dead.
They were
Yes.
laying on the ground. They were slumped over on the steering column. One of the guys was hanging out the door. Other people were laying on the ground. It was a gruesome sight.
Was there radar data to verify the speed and direction of the craft?
There most likely
going?
was, yes. Yeah,
But
they
it's
were
never been
monitoring
released.
all of it.
It's never been released, though.
Never
the
been
radar
released.
data.
No, never been released. So the
And
military.
didn't one of the I'm sorry to interrupt you again.
Yeah, go ahead.
But didn't one of the family members of the Mexicans that died talk about this as well?
Have
I
to
think
talk.
that might have been a corroborating witness.
Have to talk to Ruben about that.
At least they corroborated that their loved one was on some kind of a mission with the Mexican military and died.
I have to talk to Ruben about that.
Okay.
He's one of the primary eyewitnesses. But when they did a reconnaissance flight over, they sent in 3 UH-1 Huey helicopters and a Sea Stallion, and they hooked up lanyards to the craft. It had a dent on the side, kind of a breach on the lower section there, and then they lifted this to CDC headquarters in Atlanta. That's where they brought this thing. So I want to go to the full color illustration now. Here are the 2 helicopter types that were used, 3 Bell UH-1s and 1 CH-53 Sea Stallion, flew to CDC headquarters. Here's what the retrieval operation may have looked like if we were there and could see this thing. And so what this represents is some of the deepest black programs within the United States government is when we steal out from under the noses craft from another government. That's the deepest black of the black.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Like, wouldn't that raise some sort of international incident? Like,
Absolutely.
you're just going to go in, but I guess if the pilots were dead, and somebody correctly pointed out, yes, this case was on the History Channel, I think on UFO Hunters.
That's correct. That is correct. That's right.
It's an interesting case, but that's another one of those things. Like, why? I'm assuming that the United States government knew more about how to safely recapture these things, and the Mexicans somehow got contaminated by something. And
yeah, we believe there's some type of biological agent that was associated with the craft. Yep. Let's go to another view here. Here's a top view looking down at about 70-degree angle look down. But this is another case. So we've got at least 15, 20 discs now at this point. The body count keeps on going up. Fort Dix McGuire Air Force Base. And George Filer has talked about this multiple times. This is January 18th, 1978.
Yeah, and for those unaware, and Michael, you may be, I spent every summer in my childhood and up till 18 at a town called Browns Mills, New Jersey, which is right next to Fort Dix and McGuire Air Force Base. And I went to McGuire Air Force Air Show every year.
Really?
And we spent time on Fort Dix. Fort Dix is a training base for those unaware. So imagine being a child and going through the woods and then finding all the obstacle courses that the Army uses to train everybody, and then figuring out the times they're not there. We had a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So Sergeant in the Air Force Security Police, page 131. And George Filer talks about this because he was involved in this case as well. So we have his testimony.
Multiple witnesses. Yes. This is one of my favorite cases because I know I spent my childhood on both bases.
So about this area.
They used to be open, and there was rumors about this when I was a child. And my father told me about this because he was sort of an amateur aircraft historian. I don't know if you know, but he was a helicopter mechanic in Vietnam.
Interesting.
My father, and
wow.
he told me about this story when I was a child.
Wow, isn't that interesting?
It's part of the local mythology.
Okay.
In that area.
So during that night, there was what appeared to be UFOs flying over the base. Now, there was an MP that was going around the perimeter area of the Gate 5 here. He got up to this dirt road, and then he saw something come out of the darkness. He got out of his squad car, pulled out his .45 pistol, and shot an ET, approximate area of incident with Fort Dix MP. Okay, that's where the X is. whatever or whoever this ET was climbed over the fence line and then was deceased and found at the end of the old runway site of dead body. This is at the McGuire Air Force Base of it.
Yeah, and for those unaware, Fort Dix butts directly against McGuire. And
correct.
McGuire is fenced in. The whole of McGuire is fenced in. But Fort Dix, before 9/11, was an open base, meaning you could drive through it. And Michael, I wasted so much time as a child because they had this place where you could drive into Fort Dix and then you could park your car in front of a certain area of the fence and watch the airplanes take off and land. And my father, being such an aircraft nut, he would sit there for hours with us and watch mostly C-130s. It was boring. All they had when I was a child was F-4 Phantoms for training purposes. Okay. That was the most exciting plane they had there. So I was bored out of my mind for 3 hours at a time while my dad would bring snacks and just sit there and watch these airplanes take off. I know exactly where this is, and I spent time there as a child.
That's cool. That's really cool.
There's a road on Fort Dix, and the fence line is right next to the main road that goes across Fort Dix. Unfortunately, now, since 9/11, the bases are both closed. You can't, I mean, I guess for the air show, they open it up again, but that's once a year. Mm-hmm. They were very concerned because you used to be able to watch the airplanes take off and land, but because of 9/11, they didn't want terrorists like telling people in Iraq, you know, new troops are coming, new supplies are coming, or they're taking off from here, and be able to pinpoint, you know, those supply C-130s, I guess. That's mostly what they did, is support and logistics.
So you know exactly where this is then?
I know exactly where this is, yeah.
That's great. That's great. All right, so let's see if we can go to the map here. Now we've got the actual satellite look down. Approximately this area here is where this went down, to the best of my knowledge. Briarty Road, not sure if you know where that is. But...
Yes.
Okay.
Vaguely. It's been a long time.
Yep. All right, so after this thing died, according to the primary eyewitness, and then the things that George Filer had talked about, here's the drawing. So we have the 45 caliber pistol. Once it climbed over and just died on the other side, what they ended up doing is they built a wooden crate that was on a platform. Once the crate was completed, the body was loaded into a crate, and then there was a spraying preservation fluid sprayed on the crate. It was put into a metal container and loaded into the aft end of a C-141 Starlifter and flown to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. In a nutshell, that is the story. And this is another one that needs to be followed up on, because this body is...
Do you know, I was supposed to interview George Filer once, but then I don't know what happened. He wanted me to go there in person. And I wanted to do it like, for those unaware, he's an older gentleman. So that makes a Zoom kind of situation difficult sometimes, right? Like sometimes those guys want no part of a computer. So I was going to go there in person. I hope he's still alive. Maybe I should do that. But I just wanted to take a moment to show you, Michael, I covered this case here on Truthseekers.
Oh, God, okay.
I just used the footage of him already talking about it. Alien shot and killed at McGuire Air Force Base, the strange case of the murdered alien visitor.
That's right.
So, yeah. And for those unaware, I think because there's a little bit of miscommunication, or we're not communicating things correctly. So many of these cases are anonymous sources from Leonard Stringfield, but many of these cases are also have connected names that are primary witnesses. Right. So George Filer, I talked to him on the phone, and he's a real witness to this. In fact, he was told to brief somebody about the murdered alien, and he was totally like, "You want me to tell a general that we killed an alien on the tarmac? Like, really? That's a crazy case." And I was aware that there was multiple witnesses to this event, but some of them are anonymous. George Filer didn't care. After he retired from the Air Force, he said, "I'm going to talk about this." And he told his wife, he told his family, his whole family knows about this situation. So that's one of those weird ones. Like why, there's just an alien running around and they shoot and kill it, and then they package it off and take it wherever they take these things.
They took it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Yep.
And did you know, Michael, that my own UFO sighting as a child that got me down the rabbit hole was just 2 miles from where this situation happened, but years apart?
Interesting.
Mine would have been in 1984.
Okay.
So that's years after this event, but I always wondered if that was somehow what I saw was somehow connected. Like maybe they're hanging out still in that area. I don't know.
It's possible.
Weird. It's just weird. Yeah. Yeah. You reminded me of him, though. I'm going to try to find his phone number now.
Yeah, we do need to follow up with George Filer. That's for sure. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I'd love to get his story for sure.
That's
one of those where I would get in a car with 3 cameras and some microphones and try to get, because I think it's such an important, it's an important story, and these people aren't getting any younger. We have to capture their story before we can any longer. This
is the type C-141 Star Lifter that they used to bring it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, just to give you an idea what that thing looked like. All right, now we talked about these hieroglyphic writings. This is UFO crash retrieval 1942, long before Roswell. This is at an Army base north of Georgia. Even Leonard didn't know where it was. This is page 319 in his book. Now, when this craft came down, this was 15 feet in diameter, 10 feet high. It had 3 levels. The upper level had what looked like a display panel with buttons and switches and dials and levers. There was a mid-deck that had 4 what looked like 4 bar stools that were sitting in back of a wraparound window. The bottom level had an entryway hatch. Now, he also mentioned that there were hieroglyphic letters written around the outer circumference of the bottom of the craft. There were 4 crew members taken alive. They were 5 feet tall and 90 pounds, large black eyes, and milky white skin. Now, I want to blow this up so that you can see these letterings. I guess I don't have the blow up for this one, but similar in appearance to the triangle that we saw. Maybe we don't have the same exact hieroglyphic lettering. Who knows? But this is just another case where there was lettering written on the side of the craft. All right, I want to go to this one. 1946, Tex Martin. He was a 6-year-old boy at the time when his father brought him to the base. This is page 242, 243. And there was a adjoining cafeteria that connected up to the main hangar. And he was getting a Coke, and this is what the vending machine looked like.
Coke machines, yeah.
He was asked if he could have a Coke from this janitor, and the janitor, he had to ask his father if it was okay. The father said, okay, it's all right. So this janitor bought this little 6-year-old boy a Coke, and concurrently, while all this is going on, the door opens up and he looks inside the hangar as he's holding this soda. And what he sees is something incredible. There were 2 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboys with undetermined debris with tarps covering the top of them. There was a dish-shaped craft that had a ring on the outer circumference. There were 2 of them. There were at least 3 bodies, and he's looking at all this. This is the original rough pencil sketch that Rudy put together. This is a little bit more refined drawing now. You see him in the back looking at all this. And let's go to the refined drawing. This is our final rendering here. So this thing was 20 feet in diameter. It definitely had tripod legs. There were 2 bands that wrapped around the outer circumference, and you can see that the trailers had what we don't know what was under them, but they had tarp debris of some kind that may be associated with this whole retrieval operation. So what I want to do now is I want to take you to the full color illustration that Joel came up with, and this is our full color illustration. This thing was kind of a white in color with tripod landing gear legs. And this is all before Roswell. And he saw this when he was 6 years old. Next one, Carrot Patch, south of Salinas, California. This is July, August 1947. The 2 eyewitnesses were 19-year-old boys. They were working in an adjoining field. This thing had come down the night before. The foreman told these 19-year-old boys about this. So they go over to the craft. This is what the original sketch looked like. It was 9 feet in diameter, 4 feet tall. It had 2 indented window sections that were wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself. When they got there, and this is X marks the spot, so you can see Gonzales on this map, and it's off the 101. So we kind of have an idea of where this thing came down exactly. Here was my first pass rendering, 9 feet in diameter, 4 feet tall. You can see the indented windows. And this was the first pass SolidWorks drawing of what this thing looked like. Here's Rudy's final rendering. Now, before the military got there, these two boys ran up. One of them kicked the side of it. By that time, the military convoy arrived at the scene. They were told to get away. They were about 1/8 mile away, and they watched them bring this craft up onto the 18-wheeler tractor trailer and then move it out the location. And this is our full color rendering by Joel. So they have these craft. This is what the witnesses are telling us. They have multiple craft, different configurations, different diameters that they've retrieved over the last 80 years. And I think we can do one. You want to do one more, Steve?
Sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we'll do one more here. All right, so this is C-119 flying boxcar. This is prior to 1951, so I'm thinking 1948 time frame, Sierra Madre, Mexico. Now, this was a highway construction engineer. This is page 32. So this is the type aircraft that was involved in this retrieval operation. Now, how do we know that the craft was 9 feet in diameter? Because the interior thickness of the width of the C-119 is 9 feet 10 inches in diameter. That leaves 5 inches on either side for clearance. The diameter of the craft itself cannot be any more than 9 feet in diameter.
9 feet, okay.
That's how I
that makes sense.
Diameter. So we're trying to use some kind of mathematics here. So the military goes to this construction worker, and he was asked to help and assist the United States military in retrieving this dish-shaped craft. And here's Rudy's drawing. You've got the clamshell doors opened up with a ramp, and they're basically towing this thing into the back end of the C-119. I want to take you to the full color illustration. Here's what this may have looked like. At least 3 bodies were recovered. They were very small. They were charred, and we'll go into what he described them as. And I'm going to do a blow up here that gives you a better idea of what this craft looked like as they were bringing it in. And he said that the bodies, when he put his finger on their faces, the skin came off and was attached to his fingers. So they were charred to a crisp when they got there. They were already long deceased. So kind of a sad case there. We've got time for 1 or 2 more here. Naval Air Station, Sunnyvale, California, 1950. This is Hangar 1. You can go to this hangar. This hangar still exists. I've been in this hangar before.
That's a crazy big hangar, yeah.
It's so big, Stephen. It has its own weather. That's how big this hangar is. This is case B5, page 57. So here you've got this radar operator. He goes through a double doorway into this hangar, and not knowing what's in there, he comes across this. This thing was about 80 to 100 feet in diameter. It had a series of porthole windows wrapped around the outer circumference of the lower portion of the dome. He was challenged by a guard, told to leave, and what this gentleman said is very interesting. I'm going to go back one so we can read his quote. It was certainly no aircraft of ours. This is coming from the radar operator. This is page 57 of the book. So he believes that this was not one of ours. This thing was massive, 100 feet in diameter. Would still fit within the hangar, though. And we can do this one real quick. This is a classified materials library, unknown U.S. Air Force Base. This is a former military officer, page 212, 213. So he had the correct security clearance. He's in this materials library. He starts going through his file cabinets. He opens up one of these drawers, and in one of the files, it was marked Crash Retrievals, and it had a 8x10 glossy black and white photograph of a dish-shaped craft that was 36 feet in diameter. It had a small dome on top. There was talk of bodies, the retrieval operation, them trying to gain access, and then he said that there was a pencil-sized hole in one of these porthole windows, all within this report here. A couple of quick points here. Military officer had the correct security clearance, which gave him access to a classified materials library. Number 2, Reports seen by witnesses made reference to crashes and that bodies were recovered. In addition, diamond-tipped drill bits, this is what we've already heard of, and acetylene torches were used to gain access to the interior, reference the 2 cases we already talked about. Number 4, eventually technicians were able to gain access to the interior of the craft by way of a small entry hatch. The report said, referring to the door, that it was almost as if the material of the craft liquefied and then solidified again. This is exactly what the Marine had talked about back in December 1963. Hundreds at Farmington report large force of flying saucers. Just a real quick reference here. Albuquerque Journal, March 18th, 1950. The Farmington Armada, just exactly what that report had talked about from this materials library report. Shoot saucers down, jet pilots so ordered in 24-hour air alert. So bottom line is here, in the early 1950s, there was a standing order to shoot these things down so that the military-industrial complex could benefit from the propulsion systems of these vehicles. So in a nutshell, Stephen, from what we've looked at here, the evidence is pointing toward multiple crash retrievals being retrieved by elements within the intelligence community, the military-industrial complex, defense contractors, trying to exploit the technology of these dish-shaped craft.
Yeah, well, interesting. And we should have just a quick discussion here. So it's been a long time since I've been through that book or some of this material. And maybe I did discount a lot of it because my recollection was it was all anonymous sources. But actually, there were some named sources in the book.
No, not all of them are anonymous, no.
So
you have the names for some of them.
But a majority of them seem to be anonymous.
The majority of them are anonymous, correct. Yes.
So that's why I had a lot of problems with this because, you know, the lack of being able to verify, corroborate. But correct. Listen, I want to commend you because you put an incredible amount of work into going through this book and sort of bringing these things to life. Because when you just read it on a page,
I know.
You know. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about real quickly is this. There's this, to a believer, all these cases being so similar is corroboration somehow. But to a skeptic, it sounds convenient that, you know, like they all crash at a 45-degree angle. People mentioned in the live chat, there's always 3 bodies. Not always, but
not always.
In many of the cases, there's 3 bodies. And so I don't know if you knew Len Stringfield, but
I never met him.
Okay, nope. So you know I'm just kind of left with more questions and answers about.
You're not the only one.
Like if there's and then one other point, if there's so many of these cases,
right?
You know, I know people have security clearances. They get sworn to secrecy. They have security oaths. You're going to tell your family about this. So somebody wondered in the live chat, where are all these people that were family members of all these people? You would think if they encountered aliens or alien spacecraft that they would tell their children or tell their wives, and their wives would talk about it after a while. And I guess we get some of that. We get a little bit of that, but not as much as I would think, because there'd be thousands of people that would have heard about this kind of stuff, or at least hundreds.
Well, on the other side, we are dealing with the varsity team here. And when you talk about the crown jewels, when you talk about silver bullet technology, they will stop at nothing to keep this under wraps. So security oaths, threats toward family goes a long way at keeping it under wraps.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, these stories are interesting, and the fact that there's so many of them, because I always wonder, like, why would somebody just make these stories up? And
right.
I mean,
that's right.
The skeptical side of me thinks, well, you could sell a lot of books. This is explosive, sensational stories and materials, but you know, I don't want to speak ill of the dead. I didn't know the man, so I can't gauge his trustworthiness as a researcher.
He was a very meticulous researcher. He was.
Yeah, I've heard that. That I've heard.
Man. Yeah.
And also just a few quick questions for you, because, you know, my audience has asked a lot of questions about you, and somebody asked, how did I get you on the show? Because people know that, you know, people are all waiting for me to rip you apart, and, you know, look, I get it. sometimes you have to work with the information you're given. And if it's lots of anonymous sources, try to find a common thread, I guess. I don't know how I would approach this, but I think you did a good job putting it all together and bringing it to life. And there's some rumors running around about you, and I know you don't get into that, but people are asking me questions because people are aware that you have this huge archive of UFO material, right? Like a couple of warehouse loads.
Yes.
Like Michael is completely obsessed with preserving the history of all of this.
Yes, it's true. Yeah.
So we have a viewer question because there's rumors that you sold all of your archive to one or more parties. So the question,
I still have all my materials. Still.
Okay, well, I'm still going to ask.
It would be a major undertaking to move 200 bank boxes of material. So no, I still have all that stuff.
All right. Well, the question was, during production of the documentaries by Third Phase of Moon, did you sign over the rights to your archives to Stephen Greer or any of the production staff?
I still have the rights to all of my original material.
So you're just loaning it to them or giving them access to your archives?
Well, this thing is bigger than me. It's bigger than all of us. And
I said so before, you're going to give me equal access to those guys, right? I'm just asking.
If we don't come together as a united coalition and do something drastic and take the bull by the horns, all of us are going to die, and we're still not going to know. So it doesn't do any good to have isolated pockets here and there. We've all got to come together, and then we can move forward. And we've got to focus in on the crash retrievals, because the crash retrievals are what is going to break the back.
You've been saying this for years. I know you've been saying that for years. Yep. So not just because Michael's not jumped on this bandwagon because it's suddenly gotten popular because of David Grush or anything. He has been. I've known him for years. He's been telling me this for years. No. And another question that I think is a good one, but this is a tough question, but you're a tough guy and you're not going to listen. And the other thing is, people assumed that because of whatever, or other people that you're working with or for, that I suddenly you're the devil to me, or like people make assumptions. You and I are one of those people that can disagree and still be friendly and just have a difference of opinion. And I like that about you, Michael. Like, I can be honest with you and not hold my tongue. Like, and Michael knows I bust his balls. But this is a good question. Somebody says, would you agree that and this is spooky actually, said, would you agree that leveraging ufological information to profit-driven content creators is inherently dangerous from a researcher perspective?
Personally, I am not in this for the money. I'm prepared to go down with the ship because that's how much of a crusade I put into this. So to me, I'm not in this for the money. I'd do it for nothing. I'd do it for free.
People should know Michael is so obsessed with this stuff. That's all Michael thinks about is aliens and UFOs. That's why I love him, because it's like, it's like meeting Michael and talking to Michael and then hearing about his warehouse loads full of UFO stuff. I go, okay, there's somebody crazier about all this than me and more dogged and stuff. And then the other question is, I'm getting a lot of questions, and I don't like answering for people. You understand, Michael? Like, people are saying, asking me this about you or that because they see you doing X, Y, or Z. Mm-hmm. So you've worked for Third Phase of Moon, and then you worked for Stephen Greer.
I wouldn't say I worked for Third Phase of Moon. I've just done some interviews with the Cousin Brothers, which are my
and by the way, Michael does interviews with me too. Okay, all right. Well, just to clarify, and I just want to clear the air so that there's not these rumors or like people are thinking I won't speak to you anymore. And by the way, I would never tell anybody who you can or can't work with or who you should or shouldn't be friends with. I'll express my opinion about those people to him privately, and we can, but like people thought all these things, and I just want to clear it up so that you and I are good and that the audience is good, because I love having you here. So people are asking me like, why did he work for Third Phase of Moon, or why did he work for Stephen Greer? And I think it's best if like you just answer that, because and by the way, Michael's one of those guys that if you I shouldn't say this because you're gonna get so many emails. If you've got a brand new podcast with 22 subscribers, Michael will do an interview with you. Like, he's just that kind of guy. He likes to help people. So, but you want to talk about that a little bit and your experience doing that, or why you felt
like I said
to
before,
do that?
to me, this is a crusade. I'm fully prepared to go down with the ship because this is the only way we're going to change this world is to bring this truth out. This is the only way we're going to do it. It's not going to come from any other thing. You know, we already talked about how this subject was classified higher than the hydrogen bomb. It is the varsity team. We're playing for the big boys here. I can't think of a better crusade that put everything we've got into getting these cases illustrated by sketches and drawings and full color illustrations. We now have the technology in Unreal to make video.
Oh yeah, I don't know if you saw it, Michael. Last night I showed an amazing recreation. Regardless of what I think of Bob Lazar, that guy did an amazing job in Unreal Engine recreating S4, and he did it. By the way, Michael, I talked about mythology and how there's layers and layers to create mythology. And last night's a perfect example. So Dan Burish, regardless of what you think of him, tells all these stories. Michael goes out of his way to recreate everything that this so-called witness described about S4, the alleged base with the aliens at Area 51. Then another artist takes it a step further and takes Michael's blueprints and drawings and recreates a three-dimensional walkthrough of the base. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was pretty amazing.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the only way to make these cases come alive. Because if you just read this book, you might go to sleep before you make it to the end of the book.
I think that's what I remember. I don't think I ever even got through it. I still have the book, and maybe I'm going to try to go through it again.
You got to be a crazy fool addicted to this subject matter to get through that kind of material.
Well, as I recall, I stopped about halfway through because it seemed to me like to be the same story or very incredibly similar stories with different locations, different things. And I went, oh, this is too much. This is too, like it's too far-fetched to me. They're so similar but they're different locations, different people, anonymous sources. But I had forgotten that there were a lot of named sources in that book as well. I have discounted it saying that book's worthless because it's all anonymous sources.
It's not worthless. It's not worthless. It's definitely not worthless. But what it needed, it needed drawings. It needed visual aids. That's what
Michael, and don't take this the wrong way, please. But this is what the one thing I was thinking of is, I am perfectly willing to admit that Leonard Stringfield did this the right way, and these sources really existed. They weren't imaginary or made up for a profit-driven motive. He really was just protecting the sources because this is sensitive material or security oaths. So I'm perfectly willing to accept the possibility that this man really heard all these stories. The stories are true as he understood them to be, and he wrote them all down. I'm willing to accept that possibility. If you're willing to accept this possibility, that he did have a profit-driven motive, and maybe he got some good sources, and then he expanded to fill a book and make a lot of money.
I don't think that's the case. You know why? Because he never made a killing on this. His status reports sold for like $5.
I've heard
$5.
That. Yeah,
there was nothing there. In fact, he was so obsessed with this, and this is a fact. Not many people know this, but there were times during Thanksgiving where Dell had guests over for Thanksgiving dinner, and an urgent call came into Leonard about a new crash retrieval case, and he talked all the way through the dinner, and the guests left, and Dell was
so he was obsessed like the
Dell
two of us dorks.
That's how dedicated this guy was.
Yeah, I once had a source call me during Christmas dinner, and I would have been murdered. Look, I gotta call you tomorrow. Yeah.
I don't think Leonard was profit driven. He was a meticulous researcher that was driven by the subject. He was. Yep.
Yeah, and so people have seen you doing these documentaries and some other stuff. Do you want to? Is there any new projects that you're working on? Because I'm curious what you're up to.
I'm always trying to do new Blue Room Media presentations. That's my YouTube channel.
I kind of forgot about that. I'll put it in the description. I'm sorry. You don't need the bump from me though, but I'll put it in there. Michael, I need the bump. When am I coming on your show?
Oh, there you go.
That's what we got to do, because then I can get the Michael Schratt bump. And I got to tell you, it's getting to know you a little bit and talk to you and have you as a guest and get to know you has been one of a big thrill of doing this show. One of my highlights, because
That's great.
One of my favorite presentations, and we got to find it, is I have to find it again, is Michael did this whole presentation on black budget projects and where all the money goes.
Yeah.
And in it, he keeps on telling the government he wants at least a bolt from the A-12 Avenger. And people don't know they spent billions of dollars on the A-12 Avenger. And Michael's doing this very scholarly, studious article. And right in the middle of it, he stops and he goes, I want a bolt. I'm a U.S. taxpayer or something like that, right? Like, I want a bolt from the A-12 Avenger. You guys spent billions of dollars. Can I get a bolt? Can I get a bolt from the A-12 Avenger? They did. They wasted billions, and it was a beautiful plane. Do you know why they scrapped it? It was beautiful. Did it have
there were
aerodynamic
multiple reasons. There were multiple reasons. First of all, this is early on in stealth composite aircraft construction. So there were complications. It was overweight. It was over budget. It went way beyond a fixed base cost because this thing was.
Look at this beautiful bird! Isn't it a beautiful plane?
Oh, Michael? Yeah,
this is just beautiful plane.
I've been to the mock-up. I've taken photographs of the mock-up in Texas. That's all that remains, essentially.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And didn't the United States government order 30 or 50 of them at one point?
Oh, no, more than that. 560 were ordered, I believe.
Jeez, God.
And
so I was saying, though, that I remember years and years before we met watching that presentation and just being – Michael did one of the best – that I think is one of your best work, this presentation on – he goes through all of these failed projects of the United States military, and then he shows you exactly how much money that you spent, that the government spent on these projects that went nowhere, which may explain why, a toilet seat costs $800 if you're the United States government. Like, they're doing something with all this money. And that was one of the best presentations I'd ever seen. And I remember it to this day. So getting to know you and meet you and talk to you was a real pleasure, because that's one of my favorite presentations about the Black Budget Project, because it also gets into, and we should acknowledge this, a lot of people believe that a lot of these UFO sightings have nothing to do with aliens, and it's all some kind of black budget projects that are, being mistaken for something out of this world.
And there's a lot of truth to that too. Yes.
There's got to be, because look at this. This is just one of these planes, and look at how this thing looks like an alien spaceship. If you didn't know better, you would think this is something alien maybe, or something out of this world. And it sure looks like a flying saucer from the edge on.
Head on, yeah. It does.
Yeah. Yeah, these are the kind of planes. Remember, you probably grew up with Popular Science and Popular Mechanics.
Absolutely.
Too.
Absolutely.
And they had all the space planes in there. Absolutely. My dad would get it every month, and I wasn't allowed to touch it till he was done with it.
Okay.
Popular Science and Popular Mechanics. He's always afraid I'd spill shit on it, or he's like, "Don't touch it till I'm done," But they had all of these cool, ultra high tech planes, and Mark McCandlish did a lot of the illustrations. It was great stuff, and space planes and high technology. So it's just great stuff. But that was a great presentation. So,
I'm doing another presentation on the Black Budget this Sunday.
And just to be clear, weren't you not allowed to talk about this stuff for a while?
Sort of.
Michael was working for, let's just say, the aviation industry, and they would prefer that he did not shit all over the people that are developing this stuff and wasting all this money. So he kind of backed off of that. I remember you telling me, you're like, one of the last times Michael was a guest, he goes, I can't do anything on the Black Budget. I can't say nothing about that. Just aliens tonight, just UFOs. That's it. I can't talk about any of the Black Budget and the USAPs and the unacknowledged special access. I can't say anything. I'm like, all right, Michael, relax.
Oh.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you're going to do a new presentation about it.
Yeah, this Sunday at Danbury Public Library. It's going to be on video, so it will be streamed. But yeah, we'll be covering a lot of the similar
stuff. Can I steal that and post it? You're going to put it on your channel, aren't you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, maybe I'll do it with commentary, so I feel like I'm not stealing from you.
Okay.
Yeah, how long have you been working on that? Because the first one was years ago.
It's got some of the original material, but then I've added a whole bunch of new material. What I do is I take you through all of the things that we pay for: the toilet seat cover, the Allen wrench, the ashtray. I take you through the
That's why the
screwdriver.
first one was so funny,
Yep.
because
I go through all of those things, and I show you what we pay for it at Home Depot and what the Department of Defense pays for at the Pentagon.
Oh,
And
they must love you.
what I'm going to do is, like, when I give this lecture at another place where there's an audience there, I'm going to hand out Starbucks gift cards, and the title of the lecture is going to be "The Price is Wrong: Fraud, Waste, and Abuse in Government Spending." And whoever gets the correct price, I'm going to give them a Starbucks card, and we're going to go through all of these.
You can make people guess, like, how much for a toilet seat?
Yes,
Yeah.
Right.
And do you have any idea why that is? Why there's such a discrepancy? Is it just because of no bid contractors for suppliers
part
that
of it is
screw us all?
because these the money we're overpaying for the screwdriver, a lot of that is being filtered over to the black programs.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
Yep.
Well, hey, tonight was a pleasure. I want to thank you. I have to digest this. I still don't know what I think about all of this, because I'm still on the fence. So part of me is like, well, there are some real witnesses in there.
Yep.
And there's so many similar stories. Like,
that's correct.
Yeah.
Like trying to get in, what they're talking about, the rings on the craft, the antiseptically sterile interior, that looking like these things are built on an atomic level. We're stacking up atoms. There's a common denominator that runs through a lot of these cases.
Yeah, definitely. And the bodies to me is like, that is the, and I can't lie, when Grush came out, I thought for a moment, wow, this may be it. We might actually get something, but because of the skiff thing and all, we're at 142 days. There's still no evidence. So I'm not feeling very hopeful. And, do you believe though, Michael, don't you believe that the term UFO whistleblower or just whistleblower is not applied correctly? Because when I think whistleblower, I think Edward Snowden and terabytes of data and consequences. I don't think documentary film deals and book deals, and I'll go talk about aliens,
Within the context of the terminology of a whistleblower, has to be backed up with physical evidence. Then you got a whistleblower.
Oh, I'm glad you and I can agree on that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm so glad that you came here, and I hope you don't be a stranger. It's been years, I think. It's been a long time since you were here the last time. Yep. I think the last time was the Roswell thing, what we did for the 75th anniversary. So, and by the way, I'm a lazy show host, so I'll put links to your previous appearances here and a link to your show, but people could just search on YouTube for Blue Room Media, and you'll find Michael. Correct. And if you like tonight's presentation, he's got a whole channel full of this stuff. He's a maniac. He's a maniac.
All good. All
right. Well, thanks for being here, Michael. We appreciate you. Thanks for doing this.
Yep.
All right, friends. So there we go. We have a not so brief history of UFO crash retrievals, and part 2. And we want to take a moment to thank UFO John Doe for a kind and generous $4.99. Says, let's all pour one out to all the aliens who lost their lives coming to America. And Patrick Sheehan with a kind and generous $9.99 super sticker. We thank you both for your kindness, your generosity, and support. We thank you, Patreon supporters, and you YouTube channel members, and you PayPal pledgers. Thanks to all of you for helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash.
Take a moment to check in with something. I'll take some comments and questions from the live chat, and I apologize, it completely slipped my mind to take comments and questions, except for those that were pre-sent in here. Wow. So we want to thank Initials JZ. Initials JZ for kind and generous $20 PayPal pledge. They say, I consider you to be a friend. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Jay-Z, for your kindness, generosity, and support. Next time, give me your chat room user ID so that I can properly thank you. You just add a note. And we want to thank ScrubJ93 for a kind and generous $5 super chat. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. And, of course, helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash.
Be praising the cache a lot. Boy, we've sure done our due diligence. Some weeks I feel completely and totally energized, but this is one of those weeks where, I feel like I ran a marathon, but that is partially my own fault because, for example, yesterday's show was one of those that I'm working on the stuff that I have to show in the show right up to the show time. And I think it's funny that I wanted to do this part 2, and I knew that Michael had something like this. He's always got, this guy is an encyclopedia. And by the way, I'm glad, I just want to mention that I'm glad that we could clear the air because people thought because he was in this documentary or he was working with or for this person or collaborating with that person that suddenly I don't have any problem with Michael, and I certainly don't want to tell him who to work for or with or who to collaborate with. But just so everybody's aware, I did tell him what I thought, but I want to do that privately. That's between he and I, and I don't know. I like Michael, and I don't want to. I would never want to cut somebody off because they're also talking to somebody else who I very strongly disagree with. It's not my place. I'm not his judge or his jury. And I'm glad that he was here and could answer about that stuff because I feel uncomfortable answering questions for him because it's not like I go to him and say, my audience wants to know what's going on with this, Sandy Smith with a kind and generous $5. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Longtime show supporter. And thanks for being a YouTube channel member. It is much, much appreciated. Oh, and I have to take a moment to remember to say that we're starting something new, which is that Truthseekers is going to be on at 9 p.m. every night. Now, some of those nights are going to be best of or replays, and I'll show you what I mean. We have 3 of those coming up. So going forward, every day at 9 p.m., it's time for Truthseekers, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The 3 that we have coming up, Aliens, Goblins, or Something Else, the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter. And that's a weird one where a whole family, all witnesses, direct eyewitnesses claim that they were sort of attacked by aliens. They even shot at them. It's a crazy story. Then we have one of my favorite people, and that is Rachel E. Hoffman. She's a very interesting young lady, and she is, I don't know if it's going to let me do this. Yeah, I think. The very interesting young lady, and she is a ghost hunter and a paranormalist, I guess. She's also been in a couple of indie movies and stuff. Just a real interesting girl. And I think I've interviewed her twice, and both times we had a really great conversation. So for these replays, I'm just going to be picking like some of what I think are the best ones, and using them again, because a lot of people just literally ignore the archive that we have built up here. This will give us an opportunity, hopefully, to increase viewership and views and all that good stuff. And this is one of my favorites, the Aurora UFO crash of 1897. Is there really an alien body buried in Texas? The reason that this is one of my favorite cases is because allegedly there is an alien body buried in the local cemetery where this UFO crash happened. And you can see more details of this UFO crash in our A Not So Brief History of UFO Crashes Part 1. I'm going to add it to the link of the description of this video. But also coming up here, we have the really, really deep dive into just this specific case. The other time we talked about it, it was in conjunction with all of the other UFO cases that we covered from 1897 to 1965. So those 3 are coming up. And I'm going to be try to be in those live chats, especially because we don't have any moderators anymore. For those unaware, we just don't have any moderators anymore. So it may be the Wild West in there. I'll take some comments and questions from the live chat. Dawn says the trolls are sleeping. I think there was at least one. And you know what's funny? I've noticed 2 things, and I'm going to talk about both briefly. One, every time we have sort of a what I would term like a believer guest, like Michael, who really, really believes this is all true and all of that, it seems like out of nowhere there is a brand new chat room user who I've never seen here before who keeps dogging on the guest through the whole 2 or 3 hours. Just something I've noticed. And number two, what's with the porn bots on Twitter? I don't know if anybody else has noticed this. Is this only happening to me? Not my tweets, but when I reply to tweets, suddenly brand new porn girl accounts are liking my replies. And I just want to put this out there. I don't follow any porn accounts or like hot chick accounts, at least not on purpose. Like if I have some Facebook friends that are attractive females, it's because I know them or whatever. But like, I don't know what's going on with that Twitter thing. And then the thought occurred to me that somebody is doing that to me on purpose to sort of discredit me or to say that I'm using bot accounts to amplify. No, I'm not. I have never. All of our social media is completely and totally 100% organic. In fact, I used to manage social media accounts for people, including some well-known, I don't want to say celebrities, maybe that you may be aware. Anyway, I always advise against any use of bots, bought accounts, bought subscribers, or any of that because it doesn't do anything. It's only for ego. Like, okay, great, you got 500 likes. I once had a client that wanted me to buy him Twitter likes. I'm like, why? Well, because not enough people are liking my posts and it doesn't look good. So you're just going to buy likes? It's so stupid. Anyway, just something I noticed that I want to put on the record. I don't know these porn bots. I don't know if they're following me. But it is interesting. It's weird because remember we talked about this before, that I believe that there is a perception managed psyop that's happening on social media around the world of UFOs. And we can see that all of the UFO or many of the UFO celebrities that are pushing 100% completely fake stories, if you're very critical of them, along come seemingly endless, brand new, nameless, faceless Twitter accounts to argue with you about how wrong you are and how great their research is and how good their information is. I just find that very, very suspicious because why would, hundreds of bot accounts or brand new nameless, faceless Twitter or Facebook accounts be created to defend UFO grifters and people selling fake stories, right? I don't understand it. And I also don't understand why like hot chick porn bot accounts are suddenly liking some of my Twitter. And it deals with the replies, not with they're not liking my tweets. They're liking my replies somehow, which is very strange to me. And I just don't understand it. Somebody just sent me, Go Kicks Rocks just sent me this video, 20 and back, the super soldiers defending the Culper belt. We're going to have to do that as a wackadoo of the week, Go Kicks Rocks. That sounds right up my alley. And also, in case people weren't already aware, somebody sent me Linda Moulton Howe's. Somebody sent me Linda Moulton Howe's latest video, and it was a goddamn laugh riot. She's talking about wolfmen and an underground base. She's talking about wolfmen that have a secret underground base. Wolfmen. Yeah, you heard me right. She's talking about wolfmen. Oh, what is it called? It's called the who or what are the UK wolfmen? Oh, we're going to have to go through this. We're going to have to go through this. It is going to be beautiful because I just got 10 minutes in and it's gold. She's talking about a secret underground base of wolfmen. How can we not go and cover that? This sounds like important news to me. I don't know about the rest of you. There's a base in the UK that's filled with wolfmen and it's secret and it's underground. Oh, we're going into that. Yes. Maybe you told them missed why no mods. Yeah, because some or multiple of the mods were were hiding people, muting people, banning people that they just didn't like or that they just disagreed with or just said something that they found objectionable to. And we don't have an echo chamber here. And since YouTube will not show you in the logs who banned who, I just decided we have to remove all the mods because I don't know who's doing this. And I didn't want to interrogate each one, but we have a pretty good idea of the source of most of it. And, you know, it is what it is. And also the mods are getting in fights, and then there's mod wars, and we've got mods banning other mods and then telling me that we should not let them be here anymore for X, Y, or Z. They're getting in arguments and banning each other from the Discord or from the YouTube chat. And I don't support that. We have an open, you know, free speech kind of atmosphere here. So you can't just ban people you don't like or people that you have an argument with. And by the way, they were arguing over stupid shit. And one of the culprits is in the Sixth Sense. It's all his fault. They were arguing over a movie on September 3rd. And that argument extended up until, I think, the beginning of this week, or maybe the end of last week, up until very recently. They were still arguing and expecting me to take sides and ban this person, not this person. And I've just decided to wash my hands of the mods for a while. And isn't it interesting? The life goes on. We may have a few more trolls in the live chat, but I think it's been okay. Yes, and the Urban Way is asking, Wolf, is it nap smoking dog? Maybe it's the base, right? It would be, maybe it's the secret base of George Knapp smoking dogs, right? They're English. Who knew? Breaking news here, right? Yeah, it would be gold if YouTube told you exactly what to do. Yeah, UFO John Doe is nominating. I will take that under advisement. We're going to have to put some back, but it's got to be people that I trust to do what's right for the show, not what's right for their ego or whatever, you know, and we're going to have minimal ones, maybe 2. So that's a good idea, UFO John Doe. And I appreciate the suggestion, and I would probably agree with you because they seem very, you know, fair and even-toned, and it wouldn't hurt to have a few mods. Now, in the Discord, we're not having any mods. And by the way, I'm not moderating any posts. So I'm, you know, in extreme cases, somebody posted something that's very racist or very hateful or whatever. Yeah, I'll delete that if I see it. But there's hundreds of posts a day in the Discord. You know, that was another argument. Somebody once wanted me to moderate every, you know, or people were posting stuff in the Discord they didn't like, and they wanted people banned for it. And like, we're just not going to do that. We're not going to go there. Yeah, and there was strict guidelines on when to ban, when absolutely positively necessary. Like if we have somebody that just comes in here and they're cursing and they're nasty to all the other users, and you warn them a few times and they keep doing it, then yeah, they're just here to start trouble. Get rid of them. But every other reason, I can't say, you know. Yeah, and I get that, Sixth Sense. I understand, because somebody was also posting racist stuff, and if I missed that, then you know, people can use that against me, like, oh, people are their Discord is racist and Stephen must support that, he didn't do anything about it. No, there's hundreds of posts in all these different sections, and maybe I didn't see it. People who know me should know well enough that I don't support anybody being hateful towards anybody based on race, religion, ethnicity, gender identity, any of that stuff. Everybody is welcome here. And I want everybody to feel welcome here. And I'm smart enough to know that if you start letting people be any of those things, then some groups will feel unwelcome. We're trying to grow the show here. We're not trying to alienate people. And by the way, I'm sorry for the whole mod situation, but I'm not going to mediate disputes between moderators. I'm just not going to do it. I just can't deal with all that, because, and you know, just so everybody understands, you know, it's fine if people disagree and they you know, complain to me. That's not going to bother me. But when it's like constantly, every couple of weeks, there's some big drama blow up and this mod's fighting with this mod and wants me to do something about this person, and you got to do, No, I'm just not going to do that. We're here to build and grow a show. We're not here to do all this nonsense. I'm just not going to participate in that. And Art and Paranormal, by the way, I want to apologize to some of the mods that had nothing to do with any of this, and they still lost their wrenches, damn it. But I will revisit this situation. Art and Paranormal, and by the way, thanks for being a member, says exactly everyone is welcome here. Yeah, that's the way I want it, and that's the way I would prefer it to be. Patty Wilhelm says teamwork. Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of teamwork, now would be a good time to remind you that we're a viewer-supported show. And I'm a terrible show host, and I forget to play that begging bumper all the time. So just for the benefit, because this is going out to audio podcast land and all of that, I'll play that. We're a viewer-supported show. So what that means is if you like content like this, maybe throw a couple bucks in our hat. We have various ways for you to do that, and we appreciate every bit of kindness, generosity, and support. And here's Mr. Ian, the man with the golden voice, to tell you how you can help.
Truthseekers is a viewer-supported show. Wonderful people like you who enjoy this show send pledges in the form of super chats, super stickers, super thanks, PayPal, or Cash App. Instructions for how to help are in the description. You can also join our Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month you can get extra content. Patreon supporters get a backstage pass, early access to all our production videos before they are distributed publicly, Stephen Campion's music, private writings, a monthly show journal, and more. You can also become a YouTube channel member for $5 a month. A YouTube membership includes all of the Patreon benefits, plus a special members badge, priority reply to video comments, and the live chat, plus a monthly members-only video. We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors, for supporting Truth Seekers. Thank you for your generosity and support. Truthseekers is a viewer-supported show. Now there's a great way to support these broadcasts and show your support. Please be sure and check out our merchandise store. Links to our 2 merchandise online stores are in the links to this video or podcast. The Amazon storefront ships super quickly in the United States, Great Britain, and in many more places. Amazon may not ship to your country or location. If that's the case, hit our second merchandise link in the description and visit our Redbubble storefront. Merchandise from our Redbubble storefront ships worldwide, but may take longer than Amazon. We've got a great deal of super high quality merchandise for you to choose from, including t-shirts, phone cases, sweatshirts, and even pillows. The feedback from our products have been overwhelmingly great. Quality products and fast shipping. People all over the world are buying some merchandise and showing their support of the show. Praise the cash! Praise the cash! Praise the cash! We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors who are buying some merchandise and helping us to continue this journey. Thanks for being here. This is Truth Seekers with your host, Stephen Campion. Please rate, like and comment on our videos or podcasts. If you are listening to an audio podcast, please rate us 5 stars to help us rise in the search rankings. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, comment and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to an audio podcast, we love and appreciate you listeners, but you are missing the live tapings. All our shows are recorded live with video feed. We'd love you to come be a part of our live broadcasts and tapings for the podcast. Head on over to YouTube, click the search tool, the little magnifying glass, put Truthseekers, one word in the search bar, and hit enter. You'll see a strange and mysterious guy with sunglasses. That means you found the channel. Go there, smash the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to receive up-to-date info on our YouTube channel. We welcome you to be a part of our live taping and our chat room during the live broadcasts. Seek the truth. Speak the truth. This is Truthseekers. Truthseekers.
Okay, and we are back. So one of the other things I wanted to ask of you, the audience, is I'm making a new sort of board for upcoming shows. And I want to hear from you, the viewers. What is it that you want to see? What kind of shows? What kind of subject matters? What kind of guests? Now is the time to get those suggestions in, either in our live chats here, or you can send me a message at truthseekershow@gmail.com. Someone also recently asked me about starting the live in studio guests. I have a few lined up. There's a few things left to do here in order to accommodate that. I have built this whole space to allow in-person guests. We'll always continue probably to do the virtual guests because, for example, I think Michael Schratt is in California. Kind of a long haul to expect somebody to make to come here in person. I'm not Joe Rogan. I can't just say, no, I only do in person, but there are many actual guests that are within driving distance that have agreed to come here. So I've got a bit more setting things up. We have to get the audio situation figured out, which I think I did, but I got to hook it up more permanently to allow each guest to have headphones and a microphone or whatever is required to do these in-person interviews. We'll be doing that soon. So we're going to go back to the live chat. I want to take a moment to recognize and thank. I see people sometimes chatting in either the pill.net chat or the Rumble chat. And those people should be aware that I cannot see those. Those don't get aggregated into my live chat like the rest. Apparently StreamYard is working on that, and they should be doing that soon. I hope they'll be doing that soon. We'll see. So questions or comments for me, please put them in all capital letters. Otherwise, also suggestions for new shows, new guests, things that you want to see here. Now is the time to speak up and let your voice be heard. And we have UFO John Doe. Oh, that made my night. Guest, Ross Coulthard. When's Jenny McCarthy coming on? You promised, Stephen. I didn't promise Jenny McCarthy. Besides, what am I going to talk to her about? I could educate her about some of her belief systems being wackadoo or some of, whatever. That'd be interesting. Yeah, and Ross Coulthard won't return my phone calls. I have no idea why. Maybe it's because we are the people that detailed he's been caught selling at least 4 completely and totally fake stories. And I would be totally down with that. Dawn wants weird reads with Emily again. Yeah, I think she's been here twice already. She is perhaps my most popular, most requested guest. So and besides, I love her. I'd be more than willing to talk to her again. We have to get some subject matter. I'll reach out to her. I think she's been traveling, I saw on Twitter or something, but I'll reach out to her. I'll put her on my list again, right? Absolutely. And we want to thank UFO John Doe for being a show supporter, longtime show supporter. And of course, for always being around, throwing a couple of bucks in our hat. Love to see the support from so many of you. It means a lot to me. And thank you, UFO John Doe, for being one of those people. It's always helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash.
Very much for your kindness, generosity, and support. And I also just want to mention, I talked about this in the Discord. Banks are so weird. Today, I went to pay the, I had decided to just pay off like half of the loan for that land that you see in this cabin videos that I purchased near the other cabin. And they didn't want to let me pay it. It was the weirdest thing. They, at first they said, we can't take a payment that large from a debit card. So I said, well, what do I have to do? And she said, you have to give us a check, but that'll take days to clear, or give us a cashier's check. So I went to the other bank, got a cashier's check, came back, got the same teller, and then she said, I can't accept this. And I'm like, lady, you just told me to get this for you, and I did. And she said, oh, well, a manager can accept a payment that large, but I can't. And I'm like, okay, then get the manager. And then the manager comes over, starts telling me what we have in that bank account's checking account and savings account. And then she says something like, the loan's not behind. And I said, yeah, I'm aware of that. This is an additional payment that I want you to apply towards the principal, which it makes sense, right? I owe this bank, some money, and I'm here early to pay it off. And she's like, oh, are you sure you want to do that? Because you have this much in your checking account. You have this much in your, I'm like, that's irrelevant. Like, no, yeah, I just want to pay this on the loan. And then she had to go in the back and talk to somebody else. And then they finally came out and did it for me. But then I realized what it was. These people must be trained to try to talk you out of it, because today felt good for me. One of those times in a business transaction where you feel like you did a good thing. I did the responsible thing, and I screwed them out of years of interest. It was years of payments I paid in one shot today. They didn't want to take the money. And bankers, I'll never understand it. Just weird. But the good news is that half of that property is paid off as of today. We're about, I think, a little more than half, because we've been paying payments on it. So I'm going to try to gather the rest of the funds and pay the rest off and be once again debt-free. That's my only debt besides, your normal monthly expenses, whatever those are. I can't stand paying interest. But the two things I will allow myself to pay interest on is the purchase of a property or a home, or the purchase of a vehicle, because, vehicles, especially now, they're so expensive. You're going to have to make payments to pay it off. But it's interesting. They did not want to take that payment. They were doing anything they could to sort of get out of taking the payment. Even, like I said, trying to talk me out of it. The bank manager said something like, I just want to be sure that you definitely want to do this, because you could use the money for something else. And I'm like, I don't want to use this money for something else. I want to pay off my debts. It's just bizarro, right? You would think, I borrowed this money, I'm here to pay off like half of the whole loan in one shot. Just take the money. They didn't want to take it. Pretty interesting. Yeah, Randy says they love to make interests. Yeah, it's not in the bank's best interest to pay it off early. No, it's not. But that's not my problem. That's crazy. And yeah, they don't like to be shown up like that. Yeah, they don't like prepayment on a loan. No, they want you to do the full term. But I don't want to be paying on that for the next 5 or 10 years. I just want to get it out of the way. I should do a few shows on exorcism. Going to see that new Exorcist movie. Ellen Burstyn's back. Yeah, interesting, right? Very, very interesting. I'm not sure what that means, Dana. Let him talk, Steve. Who are you referring to? Tyson's late and has to watch the whole stream over again. Oh, that's fine. Nice to see you there in the Twitch chat, holding down the Twitch chat, and we welcome all of our Twitch chatters, right? How believable are those UFOs Mr. Schratt talked about? Well, I'm on the fence about this one. I thought, look, we did the brief history, not so brief history of UFO crashes part 1. By the way, before I forget, I'm going to put that in the description of the video. And I'm going to put Mr. Schratt's YouTube channel. Like I said, not that he needs a bump from me, but I will. Let me put this. I'll put it in the description of the video and also in the live chat. I'm going to just put link to part 1. If you haven't seen part 1, that's me solo going through perhaps the most cases that we covered with Schratt tonight are much lesser known mostly from the books, from the Leonard Stringfield book. I'm just going to put part 1 here and add it to the description of the video. And then I'm also going to add, make sure you check out, if you liked his presentation, I kind of forgot that he started a YouTube channel. I was watching when he first started it, and then I kind of, it's called Blue Room Media on YouTube, and you'll find it. Just search Bluetooth Media, but I'm going to add his link to the description of the video, Michael Schratt, and I'll put it in the live chat as well. Michael Schratt's YouTube channel here. I'm a terrible show host. I apologize, but if I don't do this now, I'll forget to do it, and then I'll feel like a terrible show host because I said I was going to do it. So, and I'll put it in the live chat as well, so you can go over there and check out. He's got a lot more presentations for you. He does great presentations. I'll just put Michael Schratt's YouTube, and we'll get that in the live chat. And I apologize to you users on other media sources. If you're in the Twitch chat, Rumble chat, Rumble feed, Twitch feed, Pilled feed, Facebook feed, Twitter feed, just go on over to our YouTube channel. Go in the description of our currently live YouTube video. Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Oh, now I'm back. That's weird. Yeah, we're still working on the audio issues here at the new set. And by the way, I'm going to be broadcasting from the other set as well. So it's good. We have 2 places to broadcast here. The other set will be used more for presentations when I'm solo. If I have live in-person guests, we'll probably likely do those here. And both of those setups are multicam. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, it's so interesting. Get your show recommendations in. What is it that you want to see? What guests? What future guests? If you really enjoyed a past guest and they haven't been here in a while, you'd like to hear more from that guest, let me know at truthseekershow@gmail.com. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter @StephenCambion. It's the best way to keep up with what's going on in the show. And you can also join our Discord server and chat with like-minded people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I have put the link to part 1 of A Not So Brief History of UFO Crash Retrievals. It's both tonight and yesterday, I think, is very interesting presentations. So if you're interested in UFO crash retrievals, please be sure to check out in the description of the video, part 1. Maybe we'll do part 3 because there's more. I found a whole bunch more that aren't in Len Stringfield's book and aren't covered in the first Not So Brief History of UFO Crashes. So maybe we'll do a part 3. You know, who knows? I am very interested in the crash retrievals because I kind of agree with Michael Schratt. If that's real, it's game over. And all you need is the evidence for one to be real. So we've done our due diligence, friend. Oh, yeah, Sandy Smith, I'll put that on the list. Mojave incident. It's not a typical UFO encounter. Yeah. Zach says yes to part 3. Well, there we go. Now you guys are giving me some homework to do. But this is homework I love doing. I found a whole list of UFO crash retrievals today. Dawn says, yes, please, Stephen. Yeah, okay, we're going to work on a part 3. In the meantime, we've got some great guests coming up for you next week. Now, I want to be sure that we're clear here. I will be here every night this week, but tonight is the last actual live broadcasted show. The next 3 shows are going to be Truthseekers Classics, but just to prevent anybody from complaining, because I'm sure they will, when it's a replay, it'll be clearly marked in the description of the video, TS Classics. So if you see TS Classics, that means it's a replay. And it's interesting that somehow being live gets you twice the viewers. The replays, we tried one, got about half of the normal viewers, which I'm fine with for a replay. And we hope that those replays will sort of remind people of all the great content we've made in the past and hope to continue making. Randy wants a part 3 as well. Scrub J says, thanks for the entertainment, Stephen. It is appreciated. Well, we appreciate you. Thanks for appreciating what we do here. And as far as these Leonard Stringfield cases, I am on the fence. I still have the book. And geez, I didn't realize it was that expensive of a book, man. I need extra Christmas money for kids, gifts. Maybe I should put that thing on eBay. But I'll go through it one more time if I do that. I probably won't. One of the things I rarely sell is books or music. I keep that stuff. Everything else, I'm willing to, part with. But that kind of stuff. Yes, on part 3 here as well, says Tales of the Sonic Voyage. Yeah. Mr. Ree, and thanks for being a member, says classics are great. No apologies needed. Well, great. We appreciate that. You guys appreciate those. And I do think it's important. Like, people don't realize this, but show hosts, including me, we put a lot of time and energy into some of those shows. And especially some of the earlier shows, some of the very beginning shows got like 400 views. And that's it. Because people don't go back that far in the feed or whatever. So it's kind of just reintroducing some of our work from the past. And hey, I'm a media producer and I have this huge volume of media that I have produced, and most people only see the new stuff. So Operation Shutdown wants part 3. That settles it. You can stop suggesting it. I'll put it on the board. Part 3, a not so brief history of UFO crashes, part 3. And there are some lesser known ones. We had a guest here talk about a UFO crash retrieval case that I've never even heard of. UFO John Doe. I agree with you. Maybe Gene Huff. Maybe he's ready to spill the beans. I think he will be. I think he is. He's nearing that. He was nearly ready to spill the beans like 6 months ago. So I think I have his email address. We'll try to check in with them. Oh, and I do want to take a moment to share this because this is crazy. Exclusive. FBI visited New Jersey labs. Visit scientists building a flying saucer at Falcon Space Lab in New Jersey, and revealed they are part of X-Files-like government UFO investigation. Mark Sokol, 35, told Daily Mail FBI agents showed up at his New Jersey lab last Friday and revealed they have been tasked with investigating UFOs. The scientist, the founder of Falcon Space Lab in Hawthorne, said the feds told them that they had received a tip about enriched uranium being used at the site. CCTV shared with DailyMail.com shows 2 FBI agents flashing their badges and interviewing the inventor, as well as pacing outside with a Geiger counter. FBI agents visited a New Jersey lab where scientists are trying to build a flying saucer, and they received a report of dangerous uranium being used on site. Mark Sokol, founder of Falcon Space Laboratory in Hawthorne, told DailyMail.com he was shocked when 2 federal agents showed up at his shop last Friday. Sokol said the more senior of the 2 agents told him they had been tasked by bureau bosses with looking into unidentified anomalous phenomenon, UAP, the government term for UFOs, making him a kind of real-life Fox Mulder from the classic show X-Files. They didn't find any dangerous uranium, Sokol said. They were intrigued by the experiments going on at Falcon Space. Sokol told his colleagues they are attempting to use nuclear physics to make objects weightless, the first step towards building a functioning flying saucer. Wow, isn't that a weird one? So the feds showed up at his lab, and here they are investigating. Don't look like typical Men in Black to me, though. Yeah, but interesting story. I know they're doing some weird experiments there, but I don't think they're using enriched uranium. I don't think. And by the way, I don't know him. I know Alien Scientist better, and Alien Scientist is very friendly with this person. So it says CCTV shared with DailyMail.com shows two FBI agents grilling scientist Mark Sokol during a surprise visit to his lab in Hawthorne, New Jersey. Scientists and inventors are trying to build their own gravity-defying flying saucer in the Falcon Space Laboratory in New Jersey. That's a previous article, I guess. Sokol explained him and his colleagues have been working on experiments to make objects weightless, the first step towards building a functioning flying saucer. Using this foil-lined Faraday cage, they managed to reduce an object's weight by 17.8%. Well, I haven't heard that claim before. So they're getting actual mass reduction somehow? That's interesting. So there you have it. That's the story that viewer Sixus Design brought to us earlier. Mark Sokol of Falcon Space Labs. You may have seen him on Alien Scientist Show. Raided by the Fed. Well, not really raided. They went there to investigate, I suppose. When they get a credible tip, they got to check it out. I don't think he had enriched uranium there. The article doesn't mention that the Feds found anything. But interesting story nonetheless. I'll reach out to Alien Scientists and see if we can't get any more information about what happened there and bring it to you during the next live show. Yeah, sounds like a Karen got spooked about the word nuclear. Yeah, might need to get Alien Scientist on the show to talk about this. Not rated, says Paul Shields. It was a friendly visit. And thanks, Paul Shields, for being a member. We appreciate you. Thanks for appreciating us. Tales of Sonic Voyage wants to see more porta potties. Yeah, I didn't want to bust Michael Schratt's balls too much because he's the one who did the illustration, I think, of the porta potty secret base. For those unaware, Stephen Greer talked about a secret underground base, and there was an illustration of it, and there's all these porta potties on the top. So we made a funny video about the porta potty secret alien base, you know, where you got to go upstairs to take a dump. It's just one of those things. Very, very interesting. Alga Ray says, yes, part 3 should be some of the lesser known crashes. There's plenty of them. I'll get working on that. End of the line 1 says, I'd be down for a part 4. We'll see what we can do about that. Yeah. Scrub J says, got to be nice to the guests. Well, the other thing is like, I like Michael. I like him as a person. I would, I wouldn't be rude to somebody who I like. I don't want to hurt his feelings or whatever. And by the way, he and I talk like men. Like, he can take it when I say, Michael, I don't believe this. I just don't believe these cases. And by the way, I'm still on the fence about all these Stringfield cases. I got to go through the book again. It's been years since I went through that book. But I remember it being so dry and tough to get through. Like, everybody tell me the truth. If you had the option of just reading a 400-page book that text describes all this stuff and there's 0 images in, or watching Michael's presentation about the cases, which would you prefer? I know I would prefer the visual side of things. I'm a visual person, right? Archaic Revival, thanks for being a member, says, I have been having fun goofing off on members in the chat. Yeah, I mean, listen, that's the other thing. People come here to have a good time. If people are getting in arguments with moderators, that's not a good time, you know, and I'm sorry all this happened. And by the way, if you were one of the person affected by a ban, a mute, or whatever, everything's open now. Nobody's banned. Everybody can come here, including people that have come here and been very nasty to me personally. I just decided, whatever, you know. I was hoping so much that you would have mentioned porta potties. He is an artist always open for critique, says Dawn. Well, thanks for being a member, and I agree. And Scrub J says, Michael seems like a nice guy. He's the nicest guy, so I don't want to hurt his feelings or piss him off or whatever. And he's a great guest. Like, I hate to be selfish, but I want to preserve him for future appearances here. And I'm glad we got to clear the air because people were spreading rumors that I wouldn't have him on the show, or I refuse to talk to him because how dare he work for this person or that person. Michael's going to listen. And the other thing is, you got to remember that Michael's sort of on the true believer side. Of course, he's going to hang out with these true believer people. and I've told him what I think about it privately. I don't think I need to share that publicly. People know how I feel about some of those people, but him and I are okay. And that's a good thing. That's the way it should be. And I am going to bust his balls. Thanks to that question. That means I get equal access to his archives as the Griff Squad. He's got to let me. He's got to now, right? He is a nice guy. Yeah. So we've done our due diligence for the week, but we've got 3 really good past shows for you. Truthseekers Classics, which we'll be playing tomorrow night, the next night, and the next night. So we've got Friday, Saturday, and Sunday covered with reruns. Praise the Cash, too. And by the way, the policy is going to be this for the Super Chats, because I realize if we do these premieres that people will be in the live chat. There may be some Super Chats. I might not be in the live chat to thank people. There's no moderators to thank people anymore. And one second. And also, it's a rerun, so I can't on screen stop and thank everybody, for their kindness, their generosity, and their support. So what we're going to do is I'll do a special section on Mondays after these replays play, and to catch up, we'll read all the super chats and the PayPal pledges and all that stuff first thing first. And we do want to take a moment to thank you super thanks people who sometimes get left out. We have Dawn158 with a kind and generous $5 super, £5 super thanks, just saying thanks. Thank you. Crash Dive 7254 enjoyed the show tonight. Kind and generous $1.99. Crash Dive 7254 just saying thanks with another $1.99. Nemesis Bex, the MVP of Super Thanks, says in appreciation for the truth from a damaged disciple. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Midwest 1100 with a kind and generous $2. Crash Dive 7254 with another kind and generous $1.99. We've got Nemesis Bex, kind and generous $2. We have UFO Shane with a kind and generous $2. Another $2 from UFO Shane, which is funny. He's got to stop doing that. The guy's having trouble, buying groceries. He shouldn't be sending me any money, but we thank him for being that generous. It's all jokes with a kind and generous £5. Thank you. I know it's not much, but praise the cash. It's all jokes. Another $5. Nemesis Bex with $2. See that? That's why she's the MVP of Super Thanks. I am Groot 3043 with a kind and generous $1.99. Back to Nemesis Bex with £2, £5, £2. That's why she's the MVP of Super Thanks, friends. Andrea Telkamp with a kind and generous $10 Super Thanks. Just saying thanks. No, thank you. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. And thanks for appreciating us. We appreciate you. Siren 1936 with a kind and generous $2. James Taylor, kind and generous £5. Nemesis Bex, £2, £2, £5, £2, £2, £2, Mr. Fish with a kind and generous £5. Sarah Jane with a kind and generous $4.99. Decala 2 with a kind and generous $9.99. Dark Ember Novels with a kind and generous £5. And that's as far as we'll go back. I have read them, but we went back to as far as we could. The others I'm sure I've read before. We thank all of you. End of Line 1 says, yeah, I love when there are shows on the weekends. Oh, and by the way, there will be times when I may schedule a rerun and then punt it. If something's going on and we do a live show, or I just decide, hey, I'm not doing anything tonight, I'll do a live show instead, we'll just punt that to the next week. And by the way, we've got 500 to 1,000 replays to go through. But I am going to be hands picking. If we're going to play a rerun, I want it to be a really good show. So we're going to be playing the really, really good ones. Some of the best shows that we've done. Somebody asked me to put the Anjali shows in the rerun list. Yeah, I'll do that. Those were fun. Randy says, good night, everyone. Great stream tonight. Yeah, thank you all for your kindness, generosity, and support. So we've done our due diligence Tomorrow night, I'm going to be heading towards the cabin. I'll try to make it in time for the premiere. Those premieres are in the video section. I'll be tweeting them out every day, so you'll still get a notification, and I'll post them on Facebook as well. So we want to thank each and every one of you kind and generous benefactors. We want to thank Mr. Ian, the man with the golden voice, and I especially want to thank Michael Schratt for everything that he does. I really enjoy everything that he does. You know, he was a great guest tonight, and I was happy to talk to him again and catch up with him, and especially clear the air so that, you know, there's no drama between he and I. We're okay, and I'm glad for that. So that's all I got for you, friends. Until next time, my name is Stephen Cambian. Good night, and God bless all of you.